Good afternoon, everyone. We will call to order this Tuesday, November 26th regular meeting of the Board of Trustees in this snowy weather, and we thank everyone for being here on a day when everybody needs to get home as soon as they can safely. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll for us?
Absolutely, Madam President. Trustee Calvert. Here. President Simon Holland.
Here.
Trustee Kelly. Here. Trustee Minetto. Vice President Raymond? Here. Trustee Caudill? I'm here. And Clerk Taylor, I'm here. Our student trustee is not here as of yet.
He is actually not coming because his mother doesn't want him to drive in the snow coming home from the meeting.
Very smart mother, so he is an absent. But, Madam President, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Stallworth, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we will try to move this along today because we know everybody needs to get home. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have several consent agenda items, 2.01 through 2.10. Do we have public comment? Thank you, JJ. We have no public comment. Are there any questions by board members on any of those items? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice President Raymond. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will now go to regular public comment.
Jeff Church.
Welcome, Mr. Church.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Jeff Church. I run a website, renotaxrevolt.com. I invite you to take a look. And I do have a 2-page handout for your reading pleasure today. And unfortunately, I'm here because I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the misinformation that's being disseminated to the community and to the media. I'm disappointed because the cost of a high school has gone from $135 million to $252 million in less than 3 years. I'm disappointed that the groundbreaking ceremony that was held, the media was told that the figure was in the ballpark of $210 million. Well, that figure contradicts what you were told the Capital Projects Committee on 10/3/19, that it was $252.7 million. So why can't we get it right? Is it dishonesty or is it incompetence? I can only think of those two options. You tell 210 to one, but you tell 252 to the other. I am disappointed. I'm further disappointed that the school district was caught red-handed misappropriating WC1 money, capital projects money, to fund principals 100%. Now, after I did that, I received feedback from a number of people associated with the school district telling me I was wrong, demanding proof, telling me that it wasn't that it was a small percentage. They cited a quote from Pete Eckhart of the school district that's in your handout. They didn't get the other quote from Pete Eckhart correcting that. I stand by 100% of principals' money, funding for certain principals, was funded from WC1. Not 13%, not 24%, 100%. And Mr. Eckhart finally admitted that, although apparently the Board of Trustees didn't get that information. I'm disappointed. So what is it today? Is it 13%? What is it? Again, I'm disappointed. It should be 0. The response I get from you is that it's supposedly legal. I disagree. I'm not an attorney, but I don't think it is legal. But even if it's legal, it's promises made, promises broken. Just a few of those are in your handout. Over and over and over, you say that the money cannot be used for school administrators, including principals. The money cannot be used to pay teachers, administrators, legal fees, or more. Pete Eckhart said it could not go to salaries. You guys said not on administrator salaries by state law. Well, that's where we get back to, is it legal? You said by state law, you can't do it. Here's another great quote. WCSD has no ability to supplant funds. Supplantation is not possible, quote by Pete Eckhart. NRS 387, 3287 says must be expended only for the renovation, replacement, and depreciation capital assets for the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Church.
Terry Crow.
Terry, welcome.
Terry Crow, mom of 2 Washoe County students, 7th and 9th grade. And I'm here today to voice my frustration and disappointment with the Washoe County School Board. You, the members, the leaders, and decision makers, I'm not impressed. The lack of transparency, good decision making, and overall professionalism is ridiculous. It's like I'm at a circus watching the clowns juggling, and they can't keep the balls in the air. The consensus from the chatter in the teachers' lounges, friends, other moms, Facebook, and former teachers supports this opinion. You're the talk of the town. When we moved here in 2014, we were excited, and it seemed like the move was too good to be true. And boy, was it. It's within that first year that we started to see the writing on the wall and the red flags with this school board. Flag number 1 was when my son started your SWAS program. That seemed to lack organization and teachers equipped with the ability to handle the grade combo classrooms and portables that were separated from the other kids. We removed our son from the program under the extreme suspicion that the program was lacking organization and highly mismanaged. Our suspicions were validated immediately when a third-party agency came in to interview the parents of the SWAS program. Then, 2 SWAS teachers were switched over to regular classrooms, and Lisa Riggs, who was the director of SWAS at that time, was reassigned or resigned. Flag number 2, Tracy Davis. Everything from the beginning to the end with her. Her salary, her review, her travel, even her place of residence, and now her filing a lawsuit. There were issues from the start. A bad apple from the beginning, and yet you didn't see it, or you chose to turn a blind eye to it. Flag number 3 was the snow day, digital day fiasco. Didn't get that right. Flag number 4, my son was assaulted on a school bus coming home from Pine Middle School. Although as parents we were not allowed to review the video surveillance, we were informed that the assault was 100% unprovoked and so violent that the officer informed me that he was glad I wasn't able to see the video. Only a 3-day suspension was given to the other child, the minimum. But the most alarming thing was that not a single board member, school teacher, principal, admin, or counselor reached out with a phone call, a note, or a letter regarding this violent event that happened to my child. Today's red flag now, why I'm here today is the recent whooping cough outbreak at Damani Ranch, the way you've excluded students. Parents may accept the exclusion policy as part of their religious exemption, but with the consent is given with the expectation that the exclusion will be implemented within reason and rational criteria. Decisions are poor in judgment. Your decisions exclude students' decisions and show you don't listen to the people.
Ms. Crow, I'd be happy to meet with you at any time.
I shouldn't have to reach out to you.
I'll be happy to reach out to you if I get the information.
Katina Taylor.
You guys all received a letter
Welcome,
from
Ms.
me.
Taylor.
My children are in Washoe County School District, and I'm with Health Freedom Nevada. Thank you for hearing me today. I ask you to think for a minute about times in history when ignorance and fear caused one group of people to treat another group of people as different, dangerous, or not worth treating with equal treatment. In the medieval ages, it was medicine women. During the Holocaust, it was another religion. During the Civil Rights Movement, it was color of skin. Looking back at all these situations, we all agree this is heinous treatment of a group of people based out of fear and ignorance. Today, we pride ourselves on being evolved and seeing the merit of humans based on not their appearance, race, or color of their skin, but on being human. I ask you to consider today that there's a group of children being ostracized, segregated, and marginalized based on fear and ignorance, and it's happening right in front of us. A group of children is being discriminated against based on extreme fear of an infection that is treated in 5 days with an antibiotic and is minor and healthy children. A group of students is being ostracized based on 100% belief in a vaccine that is far from perfect. Throughout history, medicine has evolved and adapted based on evidence, based on common sense observation of effects. And thank goodness, because otherwise we'd still be bloodletting and using mercury for infections? Why then, in a situation where the empirical data and evidence indicates that the vaccinated are susceptible, possibly as susceptible as the unvaccinated, is a healthy group of children being ostracized when they did not even start or contribute to this infection? Why are they assumed this susceptible group, reservoirs of infection, when the infection has only been occurring in the vaccinated children? The policy of excluding children in order to control the spread of this infection is not founded on evidence. If someone can show me that removing the unvaccinated for excessive periods of time is highly impactful to protect from the spread of this disease, then maybe we can justify this harsh quarantine. But according to the statistics, this outbreak started in the fully vaccinated. Could it be that the vaccinated are as susceptible as the unvaccinated? And don't you want to know the answer to this before you allow the wholesale, unquestioned, and unchallenged segregation of this group of students? The health department has admitted that the vaccinated children can get and spread this disease, that the vaccine is not perfect. And in the absence of a rock-solid protocol for preventing the spread of this disease, the exclusion of these unvaccinated kids is an end that is not justified by this means. Being all we have or about as good as we got doesn't justify this treatment. How can we allow this treatment simply because of the unwillingness to reassess an outdated policy? If you won't demand the policy be reassessed, who will? If we as citizens stay in our lanes, ignore the treatment of a group of people because that's how it's done and they're the experts and that's not my role, then we are no better than people throughout history who have watched the mistreatment of people right in front of their eyes and not asked anything about it. I ask that this be reevaluated, the policy be reevaluated. I ask that these children right now be looked at and assessed for being put back in school. This is not okay. I ask that you please, is this treatment justified? Please, I'd love a meeting with you, Madam President. You did get a message, and letter from me, so we would love to sit down.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Carissa Hoover.
Ms.
Hi, my
Hoover,
name's
welcome.
Thank you. My name is Carissa Hoover. I'm a Washoe County School District teacher and a concerned community member. My goal in speaking today is to address the recent Pertussis cases in our school district, raise awareness on some points that may not be known, and to support the rights of students. It is a fact that even if you get the Pertussis vaccine, you are still able to contract and spread the infection. Epidemiological evidence of recent outbreaks supports the fact that by far, most outbreaks across the country are in the fully vaccinated, including Bishop Manogue High School and Harvard-Westlake Private School in Los Angeles, where the 50 children who came down with pertussis were fully vaccinated. It is troubling that employees that couldn't produce current vaccine documentation had to use their own sick days when there is no vaccine mandate for employment, and none of these employees posed any more of a risk than the vaccinated employees. The employees who were encouraged to get vaccinated at one of the clinics then returned to school and became asymptomatic carriers of the infection. This means that they, after being vaccinated, can spread the infection to anybody. I had some teachers at my school go to one of the clinics, get a booster shot, and return to work the next day. This then puts everyone at my school at risk. Why is it that those employees were not asked to use their sick days so they wouldn't risk spreading the infection to others, but the unvaccinated were asked to use their sick days? I understand the district wants to reduce the number of pertussis cases in our school. However, the policy is very flawed. The major issue is that the vaccinated students can remain in school while the unvaccinated are being excluded, discriminated against, segregated, and their right to education is being taken away. This is not okay. 21 plus days is an excessive amount of time to be taken out of school and expected to keep up with no regression. Having my students absent for 1 day puts them behind, and way too much regression in learning can happen in 21 days. We need to repair the damage done to excluded students and offer immediate educational, social, and emotional support to the families wrongly discriminated against. Yes, pertussis is highly contagious and everyone is susceptible, but it is also a bacterium that can be treated with antibiotics. I am asking that you have reason and logic and understand that these children are suffering and this policy must be reassessed and changed. Thank you.
Ms. Hoover. And just for everybody's information, we will be having a review of the policy discussion in January. Of course, we've been in close contact with the district health department, and the district health department makes the determination about the exclusion. So that has not been our decision, but we will be reviewing that policy in January.
Greg Canton.
It's the Washoe County District Health Department. Welcome.
Hello, Greg Canton. I'm here about the Damani Ranch situation as well with the Pertussis, and I listened to what a couple of people have had to say, and I'll keep it brief. Basically, kids go to school, they're healthy, somebody gets sick, it's a contagious infection, you send them home. Let them be out of school. The healthy children stay in school. Now, pertussis can be asymptomatic. In other words, you have vaccinated kids running around the school who can infect other vaccinated kids or other unvaccinated kids. We don't know for sure. But when a kid gets sick, you send them home. It makes no sense to me to be sending home the unsick kids before they get sick. They're the ones who should be in school. So since there's no really extra protection to the vaccinated because they're the ones who are asymptomatic, again, it is the health department's rules that seem to be screwing up the school district's ability to put the children's benefit first. Kids want to be in school, and if they're healthy, they should be allowed to be in school. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Canton.
Jamie Hepworth.
Ms. Hepworth, welcome.
Hi, my name's Jamie Hepworth, and I'm here representing Health Freedom Nevada, and I'm also coming to talk about the pertussis situation. I just want to reiterate a little bit of the science on the situation with pertussis so that it can be more clearly understood. The DTaP vaccine has been talked about in a study by Oxford Pediatrics, so not just Joe Schmo on the internet, in a recent study just this February that demonstrated that all recipients of the DTaP vaccine will be susceptible to pertussis for the rest of their lives due to linked epitope suppression. This, what does that mean? Well, they're susceptible to pertussis. It's because the strain that they use in the vaccine has evolved away from the vaccine. And because the vaccines cannot cover all of the strains and an evolution of the bacterium has happened, the body only responds due to a theory that they're calling first antigenic sin theory. It will only respond to the cases that are the same as the one in the strain, but it will not respond to those that have evolved. It's kind of like when you think about antibiotic-resistant infections. Since the vaccine is not 100% effective, there are strains that can mutate, and then the vaccine actually makes people more susceptible to the illness. So we need to consider that in the policy. And the other things that have been talked about with asymptomatic carriers is that there was a baboon study done where they vaccinated baboons with the DTaP, and they found that those who had recently been vaccinated were actually able to spread to the unvaccinated babies pertussis because of their vaccination. And so that is, there's a period of time of incubation where there is a risk factor for that. And maybe that should be considered in the policy as well. If we want to be fair, maybe having, like, okay, if you're going to get vaccinated with a DTaP before school starts, let's have a window of time that needs to be done early enough so that kids who are getting recently vaccinated are not potentially being asymptomatic carriers and spreading and then causing outbreaks that cause more children having to leave school for a time period. So those are just a couple of studies that I think would be helpful in addressing the policy. Thank you for your time very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hepworth.
Nancy Jones.
Welcome, Ms. Jones, and your sidekick.
Thank you. She's my favorite little person.
Yeah.
I'm here also as a representative of Health Freedom Nevada, and you've heard some of our concerns, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. This is an impactful situation, and I don't know if you're aware, but I know that part of the goals that you have as a school are not just about the academics. I've heard talk about the social and emotional, the behavioral aspects, like there's a whole person here, right? And when that child is excluded from school for 21 days, that's 3 weeks, guys. That's a long time. That's isolating them in a way that can be damaging to them mentally and socially and psychologically. And there's a student in Washington who actually committed suicide after following an event like this, where it was so detrimental, and coming back to school and having to face like, oh, I've been gone, people moved on, they're treating me weird, because I'm different, because I'm religiously different, or because my medical history didn't allow me to get this vaccine that apparently doesn't work well enough to keep the fully vaccinated from getting this thing, but yet I was sent home from school. And like, that's hard for kids to wrap their heads around. And I think that needs to be some pressure point and some sort of input from you as a school board, that you can have that conversation with the health board, and so we can work together rather than sort of having these policies that clash with one another, where we've got one NRS that says this kids have to be out of school, and then that clashes with the absenteeism policy of 17 days missed of school, and suddenly you're risking your academic career, your future. That's your whole success, and everything that you've built up to that point can be dashed by a few fully vaccinated kids at your school getting pertussis and getting to go to school again the next day. Like, that doesn't actually make sense, and we need to make sure that the policy addresses that. And I hope that you as a school board will put some take the information that we're offering here and the most up-to-date science about the way that this actually works, and take into consideration the health and the mental well-being of the students. Another issue about this situation that was disturbing to me as someone who cares deeply about religious freedom was I read in the Reno Gazette-Journal that the 19 students who have been excluded from the DeMonte Ranch High School were excluded because they have religious exemptions to vaccines. I read that and my eyeballs just about popped. That is private student data that should never have been shared with the public. That's not even information that the health department needs in order to control an outbreak. They don't need to know why a person's exempt, and if it happens to be a religious reason, that's part of that student's private data that they submit to for their enrollment. So that's alarming to me, and I hope that that's a situation that you can also look at to address, so that so that no one's discriminated against because of their religion or because of their medical conditions. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Tara Fenton.
Welcome, Tara.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I kind of scribbled my name. It's Tara Thornton. Hi, I'm a member of Health Freedom Nevada. And thank you for, I came in late, I missed Katanya's, but I heard everyone else. And I heard you say that you're going to be reassessing this policy in January. And I guess what I would kind of bring to the conversation after all that you've already heard is how important that will actually be. And I think we know that, like, every 4 years when we vote for a president, we hope for, change at the highest level of our government. And it takes a lot to see change. But if we're ever going to find solutions to problems in our life, in our communities, our societies, it's at this level. It's here. This is where we can get it right in real time, where we can take action together. And I would really urge that when you meet and look at the policy with the health department, you're going to say, okay, we're looking out for the best interest of the children, but the health concerns are in the hands of this department. So we can only have so much input. And I would urge you to have a much bolder mindset and join with the community members, with each other, with the different departments that are, in this conversation together, and try to find a real solution. Because what we've got here is a gap between emerging science. This is vaccinology's own science on waning efficacy on the pertussis portion of the vaccine, and a situation, a real-world situation that's occurring right now with kids under your care in your school district that are being excluded, as well as teachers that were excluded, based on a policy that's in place that really needs to be relooked at and addressed. And I would say, let this be a moment in time for a model for our nation. Like, show the world or the nation how a community can come together and look at the pieces and find a way forward that is the least restrictive, the most beneficial for the entire community. Because I can tell you that there is discrimination and that children face based on their health status. And I know that you want the least restrictive and most apt solution for those children. So I guess really what I'm just saying is to really be bold and take your, the role that you took on here of the care of the children in the Washoe County School District, and meet with the different members of the community, of the different agencies, and go for bold solutions, because that's what this is going to require. This isn't just going to be have a few meetings and it's going to be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thornton.
Deanna Manichek.
Deanna, did we get your last name right? Mandachek, welcome.
Just like it looks. Thank you. I'm one of the parents of one of the boys that was excluded from school, and I have heard that there has been no outreach from us. You haven't heard from us. So I'm here to tell you my story of what happened. I didn't think I was going to cry, but let me tell you, we've been busy at home managing the chaos in our household and helping my child who's been eliminated from school, and he doesn't know why, and he's confused. All I can tell you is what happened. We work too, so this was thrown on us last minute. We didn't plan this into our schedules and into managing our families. We had a phone call that Wednesday evening, just a phone message, so I returned the call first thing that morning that I heard my son would be excluded from school. I did not choose that. I was told he would be excluded. When I returned the call the next morning, the person wasn't there. I had to wait for the phone call back. So I had to go to work. My husband went to work. I had to leave my son at home, tell him he can't go to school with no reason. He was at home by himself, confused. We didn't know what was going on. So finally I got a call back at 9 o'clock while I was at work. Had to leave my own patients and get the phone call. I was told about the 21 days out of school, 7 days if he would go get the vaccine or he would be excluded. I had to call his teachers, get in contact with his teachers and organize the work that was put on me and my son. After that, we were told he would be unenrolled because of the absence policy, and that was still, we didn't really know what that meant. How does that influence us? I still don't know. After that phone call, we had no further contact from the district, from the school. Friday, over the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, we had no more phone calls from the district or the school, nobody. We panicked that day because he takes AP classes and honors classes. We didn't know what that would be, missing 21 days of school. So I went and got him the booster shot so he could go back. He also plays sports. He didn't want to be missing his sports. So that Tuesday, I called back the district to get a little bit more information. Could he go back to school? Yes, he could. Then they did call us Wednesday night, but that was 4 days and through the weekend of our family panicking and not knowing what to do. They said he would not be responsible for the work, that the teachers over that time that he was excluded from school, but what did the teachers do? They start emailing the work home. So he doesn't know what he's responsible for. He's missing the lessons. He was also sick. He received some side effects from the vaccine, so he couldn't do any work at that time. I emailed all the teachers back. They were great. The counselors was great. His coach was great. The athletic director was great. But nobody from administration or the district or even the principal, nobody called. Nobody cares. Is what we felt. I know they care. They were under their own chaos, but that wasn't something that we had planned. All I want to say is that they say they did this for the health of him, hit my child. What about his mental and emotional health and the rest of the family? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mandachek, and I'm sorry that has been a terrible experience.
Pablo Nava Duran.
Welcome, Pablo.
Hello, how you doing?
Okay.
I said send you an email, so well, I did send you an email, and I'm sorry I'm late for posting the email because I have a lot of work to do. That's kind of something like that. I know a short weekend, so, and I like to say that, and I have no concern this week's. Not a zoning meeting this week, so I went to the zoning community, and many parents were concerned about diversity based on race, ethnic, color, because of a zoning policy said violation against the law in 1964. I looked at Title 7, have to do race, color, age. Age is not really important, but you cannot discriminate against older people, kind of age discrimination, something like that. So I learned that HR class, so I learned that law, so law is a law. So our Near World community diversity is never our goal. So our goal is to eliminate to re-overcrowded and eliminate spitz feeder, something like that. So many zoning community were like this. They said like they will have a different option December. So okay, different option for December, and I got nothing to say about zoning community, and I want to say like I have no concern for this week, but I will try to give them rest and have a nice Thanksgiving, and I will say Happy Thanksgiving, and I will see. Mostly you will see you at zoning community next month. I will try to post like zoning community. We post New World zoning on a few weeks, so I try to give you rest.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Todd Bailey.
I know he's here, Mr. Bailey. There he is.
Apologies, Madam President. I didn't really have any opening comments until, as I was walking in, I heard some of the parents talking about the fact that of the students who were not allowed to attend school, the district somehow identified them as religious exemption and other private information. And who did that? Who released the private family data that all parents have to input every year before their child can go to school? Who did that? I mean, it's a violation of law, isn't it? Shouldn't there be some kind of investigation of how the private family data of parents who have a religious exemption was released to the media? How did that happen? How can we find that out? I mean, there must be a way. Somebody had to access that information. There must be a data record of who accessed that information, how the determination was made, who made the decision to violate the HIPAA law, the Family Data Privacy Act, number of state laws. How did that happen? We come to this microphone and talk about computer errors, but this clearly is not a computer error. This is an example that we also talk about where a human reaches into the database and pulls information out and makes a decision about what to do with it. Unfortunately, every parent of every student in Washoe County is vulnerable. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bailey.
That's all I have for this item.
Thank you, JJ. And just to clarify, state law requires immunizations except in the case of medical or religious exemption filed by the family. So that's how people get exempted from providing, having to provide their immunization record. Okay, we will move on. And, sorry, my file here. Our next items are under Item 4, and the first one is discussion and possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 3350, staff travel, which includes language related to appropriate reasons to travel and budgetary considerations, and initiate the 13-day public comment period for possible action. And Mark Mathers, our CFO, is here, and Rob Luna is not here. So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. We had a pretty detailed discussion of this policy at the Board Policy Committee previously, so I'll just summarize this policy saying that it seeks, again, to clarify the reasons for travel and training for Washoe County School District employees and establishes protocols for how we budget that travel and training and monitor the expenses for travel and training. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Okay. Vice President Raymond.
Ready to make a motion?
She is moving things along. Is there any public comment? No public comment. Okay.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 3350, staff travel, and initiates the 13-day public comment period.
Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And we did have quite an extensive discussion of this at our policy committee meeting, so thank you for that, Mr. Mathers. Okay, 4.02, discussion and possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 3540, gifts, bequests, and donations, which establishes protocols for the acceptance of gifts of money or property by the district. The proposed adoption of Board Policy 3550, grant funds, which establishes protocols for application for and use of grant funds. And the proposed deletion of Board Policy 3280, gifts, grants, and donations, which would become redundant and initiate the 13-day public comment period. And let's see, is that Lauren? Yes, Ms. Olin, our Director of Grants. Welcome.
I'm trying to figure out. Okay,
there you go.
Got it. Hi. For the record, Lauren Olin, Director of Grants. This policy is mainly a cleanup of an old policy that included gifts, grants, and donations. And so now before you have policy number 3540, which is gifts, bequests, and donations, which is different than Board Policy 3550, which is grant funds. If you have any questions, I can answer.
Board members have questions? I know one of the questions that I had to relate to whether the organization DonorsChoose.org, whether donations to that represent gifts to the district, because we have dozens and dozens and dozens of projects on DonorsChoose.org. And I just wondered, I did get the confirmation that they are gifts, and I wondered how we're reflecting that.
Well, I can go into a little bit of detail on that. Actually, the grants department does not handle gifts. That comes under the our business office. However, Donors Choose is an organization that just solicits from principals and classroom teachers, and they have to write what they want. And then if the Donors Choose organization, after they vet them, there's apparently a big vetting process, they will deliver to the teacher or the principal or the school whatever that person was asking for. So, for example, if a first grade teacher wants a bookcase for some books, then they send them the bookcase. No money passes hands. So it just becomes the property then of Washoe County School District.
But people are making donations to DonorsChoose.org on behalf of that project. There's a way that they donate on that website, and I think it's a great program.
Right.
I'm not criticizing the program, but individual people are giving $10 or $15, and I'm just wondering what the district's obligation is to recognize that gift.
I would say that probably whoever asks for whatever the bookcase would probably be appropriate to send a thank you note.
And I know it's not your area, Lauren, but
right, but that's
I don't know, maybe
all
Dr.
I could
McNeil.
probably say about that.
So I can just tell you on a personal level, when you donate to donors.org or Donors Choose, they will send you an email and you can reply. Do you want your name known, first of all, and do you want to send a thank you? So very recently, when the tragedy in our school district, I donated to that particular issue, and they sent me an email back and said, do you want your name known, or you can go anonymously? So I chose to not any longer, but I chose to go anonymously at that point in time. But then they'll say, do you want to send a thank you or anything such as that? But at this current time, the district does not have a tracking mechanism for any time that we, somebody will submit to donors.org.
And I'm not trying to make more work. I just want to make sure that the policy reflects, are we obligated to, because some of these are very small, they're $5 and $10, and there are hundreds of them. So I don't want to make work for anybody, but I want to make sure our policy would cover. I don't know, Vice President Raymond?
I was just thinking about donations to the PFA, and that's more directly targeted to the school. Does that fall, or because PFAs are separate 501c3?
Correct.
Okay.
so we don't track those. But to your question, President Holland, if you looked under policy 3540, under policy section 2, gifts accepted by the district, it says it must be beneficial and consistent to the following principles: the district's mission, goals, and beliefs, the district's instructional strategies and priorities, and maintain equity in funding uses. So, and then it does go on to say what they won't accept. So I do think it does cover that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're compliant with, because it does say, in accordance with state law, all gifts shall be included among the total receipts of the district that are reported in the annual financial statement, et cetera. So I'll trust you all that it's all fine. Okay. Any other questions, or is there public comment? Okay. Is there a motion? All right, Vice President Raymond.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 3540, Gifts, Bequests, and Donations, the proposed adoption of Board Policy 3550, Grants, Funds, and the proposed deletion of Board Policy 3280, Gifts, Grants, and Donations, and initiates the 13-day public comment period.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Dr. Taylor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for staying and answering the questions, Lauren. 4.03, discussion possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 7450, Integrated Pest Management, which complies with the provisions of Assembly Bill 205 of the 2019 Nevada Legislative Session related to pest and weed control methods, and initiate the 13-day public comment period. I don't see Adam. Oh, there he is. Okay, couldn't see you behind the podium. Thank you. Mr. Searcy.
Hi, good afternoon. Adam Searcy, Chief Facilities Management Officer for the school district. So as we discussed at board policy, this is a new policy technically to ensure compliance with the recent Assembly bill passed earlier this year. There's little new material that we have to add to our existing program. We had a number of internal policies and practices in place. The most notable elements of this particular legislation that are in this board policy pertain to advance notice of any pesticides being used at our school sites. That's something that we've always endeavored to do, but is a little more strongly enshrined in this board policy. There's a number of elements referring to sort of best practices, basically use of the least invasive means of pest management possible, but whenever there are chemical pesticides necessary to deal with rodents and mice or noxious weeds, et cetera, that there must be advanced notification provided to the sites. So those are pretty much the highlights. We are going to be rolling out a more intensive integrated pest management, or IPM, training to all of our custodial and maintenance staff, so they're more familiar with this policy and incorporating it into our safe schools training as a required training for all of our facility staff as well.
Great. Okay, that's good to know. Any public comment? No public comment. Are there any questions by board members? Glad to see this, and thanks for everybody's willingness to look at some new ideas on that. So appreciate it, and appreciate the training. Is there a motion? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval for the proposed adoption of Board Policy 7450, Integrated Pest Management, and initiates the 13-day public comment period.
Is there a second? Second by Trustee Cuddle, motion by Trustee Kelly. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Searcy. And thanks for the great work always your team is doing on our capital program. Amazing. Mr. Lombardo, it's you.
I hope I get a send-off like that. Good afternoon, Board.
Discussion of, let me just introduce the item 4.05. Discussion and possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of draft Board Policy 9075, District Initiatives, Programs, and Services, which states the commitment of the Board of Trustees and Superintendent to work collaboratively on major programs, initiatives, and services, and to communicate implementation to staff, students, and the community, and initiate the 13-day public comment period. Oh, am I reading the wrong one? I'm reading the wrong one. Sorry. Sorry.
I left too early.
You did. You all let me go. You know, this reminds me of the time I had sunglasses on and I was at a dinner party and no one told me I had sunglasses on the entire time. Okay. Sorry. 4.04. I know. Good friends, huh?
Maybe I missed something.
Sorry. I saw pest management and I just went right down below it. Discussion and possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed revision of Board Policy 9070, creation, adoption, revision, and deletion of Board Policy, administrative regulation, and associated documents, formerly entitled Board Policy Adoption and Revision, which standardizes the Board Policy template and documents the creation, review, revision, and adoption process for policies, and initiate the 13-day public comment period. Mr. Umbardo, so sorry.
No problem. I hope you weren't trying to manage this pass by skipping my item. So, good afternoon. I'm here on Board Policy 9070. As I shared with you at the Board Policy Committee meeting, we're excited to have this coming into place. It's going to standardize our forms for board policies, and it standardizes a process on how these board policies are going to come about. We've been working with Lisa, our board policy coordinator, and she's Ms. Scurry. She's done a great job, and we don't really have anything else to add unless you want me to go through it. I could do that too.
No, that's all right. That's all right. We did have extensive discussion on this at the policy committee meeting. Do any board members have any questions on this one? And do we have any public comment?
Mike Burns.
Mr. Burns, is that correct? All right. Welcome.
Hi. So hello everyone, my name is Mike Burns. In regards to Board Policy 9070, I was wondering what is the most appropriate way or step for an employee or citizen to take in order to suggest the creation, adoption, revision, or deletion of a board policy, administration regulation, or administrative procedure. For example, my suggestion would be to implement Board Policy 5105, Guiding Practice H, which was adopted on March 12, 2019, to delete Administrative Regulation 5106, which was previously known as Administrative Regulation 5105, Provision 8A, lowercase I, which was adopted on January 11th, 2018. By doing this, Board Policy 5105 would align, and be consistent with Administrative Policy 5106 as indicated as the goal for Board Policy 9070 in the section titled Administrative Regulations, Provision 2B, involving consistency with applicable board policies and administrative regulations. I know that's a lot. Basically, I have two questions. First, are stakeholders allowed to make suggestions? If so, would a stakeholder talk in order to make the suggestion? Who would they talk to? Would it be the school board, the Office of General Counsel, which is in charge of Board Policy 9070, Office of School Leadership, which is in charge of Board Policy 5105, Office Chief of Staff, which is in charge of Administrative Regulation 5106, or would it be best to use the employee suggestion box? So that's all I have.
Great. Good questions.
Oh, one more thing.
Yes, sir.
So I know that is very confusing. So if I was listening to that, I would have zoned out within 2 sentences. So I brought, if anyone's interested, the letter and then the highlighted board policies and administrative regulations I'm talking about.
Excellent. Okay. And I don't know, Mr. Rombardo, if you want to respond, or Dr. McNeil, you want to respond now? I'm sure someone will be happy to follow up with you, too.
Well, thank you very much. That was great feedback, and I think all of those, and I would ask that you look out for our information for our employee suggestion program. That would be one way. But then also just know, so this policy is going to go out for, if it's approved by the board, it will go out for 13-day public comment. The administrative regulation that would be matched to this would follow that. So that's where some of the cleanup would be.
So, am I done, or should I go on and with my suggestion at another point of time? That's my question. I don't know. I mean, I have it here. It's basically my suggestion.
Yeah, why don't you give it to our clerk, Ms. Batchelder,
I'll give one for each board member.
our secretary. Thank you. And thank you for paying attention. We appreciate it. And as Dr. McNeil said, this is preliminary approval. So this is not a final approval, and this is the time when we solicit comments. If the board initiates sending it out, this is the time when we look for suggestions. So we welcome that, and that is the purpose of getting it out into the discussion now. So
Yeah, I'm not a rule guy, but I'm making sure to follow the rules.
I appreciate it. That's great. Thank you. It was impressive.
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Rombardo, did you? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the board would like.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Rombardo.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Bailey. I do think that the reason why we rewrote it the way we did to allow, not to allow, that's probably not the best word, but to have the board bring forward items is so that you can listen to your constituents and you can bring forward anything you want and bring it to board policy and take action to say, hey, please go out and draft something along this line, and if you get a majority of the board to support that, then we go and do it, and that's we being staff go. So I think that does create that situation. Also, I think a member of an employee could always go to their supervisor and ask that a policy be drafted. I think we want to be careful about just allowing anybody who steps up with an idea to cause staff to go and draft policies. Policies, as I've explained in the past, in my mind, and I think the law is consistent with this, a policy for the school board is you drafting an ordinance. It's our laws. So we want to be careful about just allowing any request. Nonetheless, we of course want to listen to our constituents, which is why you're elected, so they could reach out to you, provide you something that they'd like to see, and then you would bring it here and we would draft it, or reach out to the interim superintendent for that matter. Well, she might not want that, all those emails, but you could of course go to your supervisor or anybody. So I think that's how that's resolved.
Yes, Mr. Cotto.
Yeah, it's a quick question for you, Neil. Let's see, 1B23, where it says a member of the Board of Trustees through the board president or superintendent may request a potential new policy revision, etc. Does that mean that a board member, if they were to get a new policy on an agenda, would request it through the board president or superintendent, or does that mean a board member has to essentially get approval from the president or superintendent to get a policy request? Because obviously that's very different to have it the communication chain or approval.
Right. I think it's, and I was hoping that JJ would pull it up for me so I could see it again. I'm at a little disadvantage because I normally use my computer up there to see all this stuff, so I apologize. Do you want to take public comment while we get it pulled up?
Sure. Mr. Bailey?
Well, again, I didn't come prepared to speak on this item because I attended the workshop where this was discussed in the policy committee, and the work that the good attorney did, which it was good work. He held up the diagram of how the process was worked, and that's where I've been lost ever since. Just trying to get through the diagram of how the system would work even for a trustee. I also want to commend highly the stakeholder who just spoke, because he put that and explained it in a way that I never could. And I consider myself one of the best and brightest in the room. So the fact that he pulled that off in a way I never could, I'm still a little dumbfounded by all that. So bravo, sir. Good job. One caution for trustees, and I've seen this repeatedly when it comes to policy. Policy traditionally can only come from the superintendent or the board, and it must be a majority of the board. However, I have seen policies sidetracked, lost, forgotten about. Sometimes it's as hard to get new policy on the agenda as it is to find an auditor for capital projects. So these are challenges that we all face. I've actually seen a time when a superintendent and a president and sometimes a secretary would hold policy hostage from other board members. So I don't know how you work through this. That's going to be your challenge, but it is a difficult one, no doubt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Okay, Mr. Rombardo.
Yeah, so with regard to stakeholder input, I should mention that I felt like the chart was actually pretty good, but I think if you look at the chart, there's multiple mentions of stakeholder input. In fact, the interim superintendent, to her credit, insisted that we go back to stakeholders repeatedly. And so if you look, we circle back to the stakeholders on every single policy at least 2 times. We require responsible offices to identify who the stakeholders are up front, and then to work with them up front before a draft is even created. So I guess that might be a little bit of the confusion, because it does loop back the diagram, but that's in an effort to include the stakeholders as many times as possible. So with regard to Trustee Cottle's question on 3, you said, correct? Yeah. A member of the Board of Trustees, through the Board President or the Superintendent, may request a potential new policy or revision of a current policy be placed on the meeting notice. Well, the reason why we drafted it that way is that's specific in your board policy regarding agenda creation. So the agenda creation is done by the President of the Board and the Superintendent in conjunction. So you would have to ask one of them, and then they would confer and put it on the agenda. I can say that the practice has been since former President Taylor's time. I think and I know under the current president as well, so since I've been here, there hasn't been an agenda request that's never been put on an agenda. It's always put on when it's made. So that's more of a function to be consistent with the other policy.
Yeah, that the concern isn't like right now, it's to have it in writing, so that, let's say, a president decides, nope, I'm not going to put stuff on the agenda when it's requested, and then you need multiple trustees that have to essentially all request it at once. Sure. I just want to make sure that a member of the board isn't silenced by a president or a superintendent, because I just wouldn't think that would be appropriate. So I understand why it's written like that. I just want to make sure that avenue is there to where a member can be heard, because I know on our board policy agendas there isn't a section like on our meeting today where it's a future agenda item request. So that's not there in board policy. Right. So it's just a different avenue, which is fine. I just want to make sure that it's not an opportunity to where a member wants to have a policy heard and that member has to essentially go get support because it's written in a way to where superintendent and president are saying, nope, we're not going to let you have that presented for the board to vote on.
I totally appreciate that and respect your point of view. My only concern is unless the board wants to make a specific exception for board policies, you would have to, so, I mean, you could do that. We could do that for sure, but it would be a specific exception to the other policy. And so we drafted it in a way to be consistent. I don't want to create inconsistencies in policies. That being said, if a president and the superintendent weren't to put an item on the agenda, you would have to get just one other person because we don't want to create a voting situation. So it would revert back to that because it's not discussed. So you would just revert back and you'd have two people, and if two trustees said, yeah, we want it on the agenda, you would have to put it on the agenda. So, yeah.
And I know others of us have had the same concern, Andrew, about, having to solicit, supporters to get something on the agenda. And I think it's been great to have the future agenda items, standing item on our regular agendas, but I appreciate your comment that, it's not on the policy committee agenda, and maybe it could be added at a future time. And there's certainly nothing that has prevented us in the past with this board from asking about policy agenda items during the regular board meeting on the request for future agenda items. We've had that discussion as well. So
sure.
You could still make that public request, yeah.
And may I just add, we drafted that way on purpose because you don't have that request at the end of the board policy committee meeting, so we had to give you some way to ask. So that seemed to be the most logical. Be happy to change it, but I think it, again, would revert back to just 2 members would be all you need if.
Yeah, the way you have it is great. It makes sense. I want to make sure it's in alignment,
Sure.
And if the board chooses to change the other policy, that's fine. We don't want misalignment, but it helps me. It makes sense the way why we do it that way, and it wasn't asked as a concern that a policy wouldn't get heard. Because as someone who actually asked for a policy that we're going to hear next year, it went through the process fine. So it was just the way it was written. I just wanted to get clarification.
You bet, of course.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion on 4.04 and not on 4.05, which I read originally? Go ahead, Mr.
All right.
Caudill.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed revision of Board Policy 9070, creation, adoption, revision, and deletion of Board Policy, administrative regulation, and associated documents, and initiates the 13-day public comment period.
Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Is there any further discussion? Any other public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're on 4.05. Discussion and possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Draft Board Policy 9075, District Initiatives, Programs, and Services, which states the commitment of the Board of Trustees and Superintendent to work collaboratively on major programs, initiatives, and services, and to communicate implementation to staff, students, and the community, and initiate the 13-day public comment period. Dr. McNeil and Mr. Rombardo.
Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Kristen McNeil, along with Chief Counsel Neil Lombardo. So this is a great example as far as offering our stakeholders an opportunity to provide input, and we heard a lot of feedback, and important feedback. So what we wanted to do is to draft a policy that actually encouraged participation around large district initiatives that would be going forth. So an example would be digital days. An example would be the attendance policy. An example would be a policy and an initiative such as an after-school type program. Another example would be recently the anaphylaxis and some of the policies and discussion around that. You as the Board of Trustees should have knowledge of, should have a really good indication as far as what that initiative, the policy would mean. And so we put together, along with Chief Counsel, other members of the leadership team, this draft policy to put forward to the board, and we are interested in any of your comments or feedback.
And thank you for doing this. Very much appreciated. That I think it is appropriate that the superintendent seek the board's approval for those kinds of initiatives and programs that have a huge impact, either whether it's on students or staff or both or members of the community. So I'm really, really happy to see that. And I think it helps keep everybody in the district in alignment and in the loop as well, because we want to make sure everyone knows what everyone else is doing. Is there any public comment?
Natha Anderson.
Ms. Anderson, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Natha Anderson on behalf of WEA, asking for your support of 4.05. In particular, I just wanted to bring up we actually had a little bit of a preview of the anaphylaxis. Okay, nutrition, I can't do that word, especially when I'm sick.
The food policy.
The food policy, a little bit before it was actually out. Somebody had let the nurses know about it, so then they shared it with us. We were able to get that out to our building reps, and so we were able to get then some questions and everything before it actually came to this board. And so that was very helpful. And so including the association and other employees in both the gathering of evidence, but then also just what the language is, how it entails us. God bless you, by the way. Is very helpful for us, both as an organization, but then also as our profession. So I ask for your support of this. Also, the gentleman earlier brought up such a good point. There's so many policies and so many administrative codes, and how does this work and how does that work? That again, the more information we can get and figure out if there's some things that we can streamline, the better.
Great.
So looking forward to working with the district on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other public comment? Any other questions by board members? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Dr. Taylor.
I'll take this one. Turn it over. I was taking notes. I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 9075, District Initiatives, Programs, and Services, and initiates the 13-day public comment period.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. Thank you. Okay. That completes our policy discussions, and now we're up to 4.06, which is presentation, discussion, and possible action to provide recommendations or revisions to JG Consulting regarding the list of possible stakeholders to be contacted and questions to be used as part of a community-wide survey regarding the characteristics of a superintendent of schools for the Washoe County School District. Mr. James Guerra, our consultant from JG Consulting, is here, and please, James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished members of the board. Good to see everybody again. Members of the community, thank you for being here. I'll be as succinct as possible, and then we'll welcome any questions. So you have two documents in front of you. On the first page, you'll see attachment C. There are essentially two columns. These are the stakeholder groups that we have solicited for essential recommendations and feedback to garner input from. And our team, my team, has successfully contacted each of these groups and have invited and welcomed them to meet with us in person, by phone, whatever is preferable for them. Our dates to host these meetings, as you can see in the supplemental document, are the dates of December 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. And since this morning when I've provided this most recent update, we've had some new additions to the document. There will be a town hall meeting / community forum meeting the evening of December 11th at 5:30 p.m. That meeting will take place in person, and then a second community forum will be held virtually utilizing district's technology. I think we are currently evaluating YouTube as a possible forum to conduct the community forum virtually. So that meeting will take place at the same time on December the 12th. And we've added, since this morning again, a few other updates and new additions to the stakeholder list. I'll provide a more robust and a final report before the break tomorrow afternoon. Okay. And the other item that you should have, and I'm sorry it's not a part of this, but I sent a number of questions in advance to tonight's meeting with suggested online survey questions. And with your input and your feedback, if you're okay with those questions, we can certainly revise these, amend these with your suggestions and recommendations.
Okay. And James, those survey responses would be sent directly to you.
That's correct.
Okay.
So everything will be done utilizing our subscription to SurveyMonkey. So we have a premium subscription to that platform. We can aggregate all the data and provide a summative report back to the board.
Okay. Okay. Certainly, so the check marks on the stakeholder list means that they have been scheduled?
Great question. So the green check marks are those that have committed, and we have secured a location and a time on either the 11th, the 12th, or the 13th of December. The other check marks that are not highlighted in green are those that have responded and acknowledged our invitation, and we're still working on securing a date and a time. The others that are unchecked have all been invited to meet with the consulting firm, but have yet to respond.
Okay, so everybody has been reached out to. And I think, so two things we want to discuss with James. One is there anyone else on the list that is not added that we want to add to the list? And then we want to discuss the survey questions as well. And then, Vice President Raymond.
Yeah, I just had, and maybe it's listed differently than I'm looking for, but the Washoe K-12 Education Foundation.
Okay.
Which is separate from the Education Alliance.
All right. Yeah, so we'll add any other groups.
Okay.
And so I'll work with staff, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the staff. They've been incredibly supportive, so major props to them for helping us with coordinating these meetings. So we could not do this without their help. So I will contact staff and ask for that contact information.
Excellent. Yes, Vice President Raymond, and then Dr. Taylor.
I remember seeing it in some of the other documents, so maybe it's just not part of this, but I think we talked about the bargaining units being
So
part.
I was
They're on
given
the
that
second
information.
page.
They're on here.
They're on the second page.
Yeah, no, huh?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're working internally, so we're trying to create larger group settings so that the color coding, as you can see, how there's a distinguishment of how we can try to identify those that have common interests. Because of our urgency to have these meetings, we're doing our best to put people in sort of homogeneous groups, if that makes sense.
Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, James. Good to see you again. Thank you for your work on this. I have a couple of suggestions for other groups to consider.
Okay.
I see on here we have the Latino Research Center from the university. I think that's a great recommendation. I have a couple of other groups. One is there's a group of Latino pastors. I don't know the name of that group. I'll get that. I sent a text message and just haven't gotten a response as of when we started this meeting yet to get the name of that. But it's quite a large group, so a pretty large group in the faith community. And I'll get the contact information on that.
Okay.
Also, I recommend meeting with the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. We have a couple of other of our committees there, and I think they will be important to have that lens as well.
Okay.
I also recommend there's another group on the university. Like I said, there's the Latino Research Center. There's also the Diversity Center on campus, and many of those students come from the Washington County School District, and end up interning and whatnot, and having some input doing some. Sometimes they mentor in our schools and so on. And they have quite a few faculty of color.
Okay.
On that campus that are involved in that, and that input would be helpful, I think, for us as well. I didn't see a specific parent group. I know we have PTA and we have the Council on Family Engagement. Is that what PTA really is? Is whatever our PTA groups from our schools that may be interested?
That's typically the common forum that we use to attract and to hear from parents. But
Okay.
if there are other groups that convene regularly, we're open. We want to meet with as many people as possible.
No, I think if reaching out to the school PTAs and PTOs, I think would be,
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that was
Yes, ma'am.
inclusive of that. And then finally, I mentioned this to you, and I'm remiss because you asked me to try to track down this contact info, and I actually forgot, but I will. There's a newly formed group of African-American professionals.
Yes, ma'am.
Remember we chatted about that, and so I think they'll be really helpful. Most of them have schools that have children in the district, highly committed to education and so on, and be a good group we want to have involved in the school district, I think, as a whole, and in particular on the third. So I owe you two follow-ups, the Latino pastors and that group.
Okay.
Okay?
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I had a question and one or two suggestions. So the question I had was, so this is a list of groups, and at the very beginning we list the Washoe County Commission, but at the very, very end we single out an individual, a specific commissioner. I just thought that was kind of odd. I wasn't sure why that was done, and I would think maybe a city councilman or a smart city councilman or somebody would say, well, that commissioner is separate, why not can I be separate? So my suggestion would just be keep this only to groups and not have any individuals.
Right.
And then, let's see, kind of on that same page, we have media partners, and you list a couple, but I'd like to see that kind of broken out.
Okay.
So that we can see which media partners you're reaching out to, whether it's news, TV, newspaper. There's a couple bloggers that might even be good to, so I would like to see the media partners broken out.
Okay.
And then I didn't see anything on any veteran groups.
Okay.
And there's a couple good ones. I mean, I know the Veteran of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, Disabled American of Washoe County. So there's a couple good veteran groups. Maybe we can get one or two of them to be in this list as well.
Okay. Yeah, and if I may address your first comment about having the commissioner singled out. So we did invite all of the county commissioners to participate in meetings. Some are only available to meet one-off due to their time constraints and their day-to-day commitments. And since this morning and since providing this update, we've actually added 2 other county commissioners as of today. So what we suggested is to meet with them as a group, and sometimes it just doesn't work with everyone's
Well, and they
schedule.
can't meet as a group because of open meeting law. So
Sure, and if
they're
there's-
going to have to meet with you, individually or at different times.
Valid point. So, so we're doing our best to accommodate as many people, but these, as Madam President explained, that there's, certain things that we're restricted from doing.
Okay. Trustee Caudill.
Thank you. A recommendation I have for the PTA, because I know there's so many of them, it's going to be really hard to get to all of them, and so that they all feel included, is to maybe have 1 or 2 sites where their PTA president is invited, so that many different schools and communities can be represented versus only handpicking a couple, because we're not going to be able to pick them all.
Sure.
And there's going to be the natural why them and not us.
Right.
And so that would allow every PTA to be represented, because they all have a president, or they can have a designee, so that you can get good parent feedback from many of our communities in 1 or 2 settings versus trying to figure out how you're going to get to 50 different PTA meetings in a couple of days, which won't happen.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. I think it would be great for us to have some feedback as far as where these meetings could take place, the locale, for both, so that way we can garner the most participation.
Good. Okay.
I think if I may, just reaching out to the principals, and then our team can help with that. Principals they're informed of when their meetings typically occur.
Okay.
Or I think with advance notice, and I love the recommendation of doing a couple. With advance notice, those are highly involved parents, as you know.
Very engaged.
And I think with advance notice of a couple of places, many will be able to find 1 or 2 representatives that could attend, even if that's not the president, someone else with advance notice. I think they'd be willing to.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Just a question. How are people like the TMCC president and UNR president being included in would they be interviewed individually, or are they going to be invited to meetings? Because those are very important relationships for our superintendent.
Yes, typically
Community
those
college.
are individual meetings.
Okay.
But if there's a preference to have a small group meeting, we're open to that as well. Historically, with university presidents, mayor, other stakeholders, those are typically individual.
You have to go to them. Yeah.
Right. And we go to their place of business, or to the university, or to their office. So.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure they were on the list somehow, because the university president and the community college president have worked very closely. And then how does the Nevada Department of Education and the state superintendent get involved? Similarly, would that be a person you would individually interview?
That's correct.
Want to make sure she's on the list.
Absolutely. So I will contact Joan Ebert, and then we'll also work with other recommended state representatives.
Okay.
And we were today provided, again, thanks to the staff, with direct contact information to connect with the legislators. So we've got that on our to-do list.
Okay, and then under the business groups, the chamber is here, but the Economic Development Authority isn't. It's called EDAWN.
It's at the very top.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, great. I wasn't looking in the blue there. Okay.
It's okay.
And then Association of General Contractors is here. I'm thinking that the Builders Association might also want to be involved because they have been huge supporters of our ballot questions and other initiatives, so the Builders Association. And I want to echo my colleague Trustee Kelly's comment about media partners, that we would want to have different formats in addition to print media.
Okay.
But also in print media, there is a newspaper in Incline Village, the North Tahoe Bonanza, and that would be a great group to reach out to. They will feel a desire to be included. Okay. Any others? I know we're giving you lots more work, but this is the point, and thank you. Trustee Caudill and then Trustee Taylor.
Yeah, I know you had mentioned legislators. I think all of our Washoe County legislators are great. This might be at a high level, maybe not the best, but I know that at least a lot of the school events I've been to, there are representatives from our two U.S. senators and Congressman Amadei's office. If they want to take part, great. They may not want to, but they are heavily involved. And I don't know if they're on the list or not, but the Reno Sparks Association of Realtors.
Oh yeah.
They're very involved, and I would recommend involving them because they are good supporters of our school district, and they have a stake in the health of our school district because they want to sell homes.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah, that's what I recommend. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Taylor?
Thank you. Two things. I was going to recommend the federal level representatives. You can probably do them on one group. And in that, I would suggest maybe perhaps include someone from the governor's office. He's been very active and very visible since his election, and a lot of the important things that we've had. So he himself may want, I'm sure that would be an individual, that's a trip to Carson for you. But I do think that if maybe including someone from his office, I mean, those representatives are good, they all know each other, so you should be able to do them in a group. The other thing I would say is, how do we reach out to Gerlach? It's a very small community, but I think it would be really important to have them give them a chance to have a voice. You know, in this, they have one school with everybody in it. You know, really quaint community, but I think to figure out a way to best involve them somehow, even if it's virtually or something like that, to reach out to them, that community.
Talk to the principal.
Talk to their principal. There might be the best way, but I'd love to be intentional about wanting to hear their voices.
That's great.
Sure. And we were given the information as a part of the new sets of information provided today to the governor's office and directly with his team. So that's on our to-do list as well.
Thank you.
So as many people as we can. So
you might regret saying that too.
Hey, no, and I please encourage you to share my personal cell phone with those that inquire. I know that you might be reluctant to do so, but you know, time is sensitive, and we want to do our best to accommodate everybody. And even if it's by phone, you know, we're going to make every effort to visit with as many people as possible.
Thank you, James. I have a question about our what we've talked about as a community input group. I think it would have been great for them to have been formed so they could hear some of these forums. I don't know, it's not on the agenda, but I just wanted to know if we had thoughts about how that and when that's going to get formed, the advisory group to you.
Right. So the secondary group, the advisory group, if we may call it that, will be formed during this part of the process as we start to engage with various stakeholder groups and individuals.
Okay.
Part of the thought behind that is for us, just like we would in interviewing a candidate potentially, is having the opportunity to meet people in person. So we're going to have an application process which my team will screen and vet just as we would any other executive search, and we will be privy to that information, and it will be kept confidential. We'll maintain their personal, professional information. We'll screen them. We'll identify who we think would be the best ally in this work together to bring onto the subcommittee group.
Okay.
And our hope is to have our aim is to have the application available so that way we can refer people to during these first three sets of meetings.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So it'll be an online application. It'll be posted on our website under our current searches page. We're currently working through the details of that, trying to identify the appropriate criteria. But when we're here in front of everyone, we can provide that information.
Great.
People can look at it in real time.
Great.
And then we can answer any questions too.
Okay, and then I assume you will provide whatever summary comes from all of this input to those folks. Great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, anything else on the stakeholder list? If not, let's talk about the online survey questions. Did anybody have? Okay, sure. Yeah, good point. Thank you, Neil. We have given various direction and suggestions to the consultant, and Neil is suggesting that we formulate a motion to reflect the suggestions that have been made, that they be adopted by JG.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Cottle. We'll go ahead and listen to public comment on that piece.
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a lot of written comments I'll submit to the record in case trustees and staff want to look at it, but I won't go through them all. It's a lot of legal things. It essentially says that there is no magical way for the board to delegate or contract away their responsibilities under NRS 391-110, 241-020, or 239. You just can't contract it away magically. You have to comply with that. You know, this is a unique and new process to search for the superintendent. We've never done video applications before, and everything a part of this process is a public document and must be preserved to comply with NRS 239. Some of it, of course, can be kept confidential. However, it still must be preserved. The secondary group, which we are calling the Validation Advisory Group, must provide confirmation of the total number of candidates, so the cost per candidate, before the trimming can be determined. But we have a question about this. Can the Board of Trustees reach into the pool of candidates and pick a candidate that is not recommended for the 10 finalists by the consultant? So if you know somebody who's in there, but they weren't recommended as one of the 10 finalists, can the board pick that person to interview? I don't know the answer to that question. Second, can the board exclude specific stakeholders from the validation advisory group in the search process? You know, on November 12th, we had a meeting. The board, I stood up and said, you know, I'll sign the confidentiality agreement, whatever's necessary. Everyone was like, so, I mean, if you can't pick people who can be in that group, can you exclude people? I would simply argue that, therefore, that you created a subcommittee of the board at that moment under 241 and 239. This is an ongoing process, and it's going to have to survive an audit at some point. So let's get it right. Let's make it defensible. But, you know, there's a real-world question in all of this that I think we should all think about beyond the legal questions. We all agree we want a new superintendent who is loyal, honest, and has a track record of integrity. Yet, you are free to be disloyal and dishonest to the community and the employer that you are currently with when applying for the job. That's a terrible example, and it leads to superintendents from the past. From the point of application, the process should be open and honest. If you are watching this board meeting and you'd like to be the next superintendent of Washoe County School District, be open and honest with your community and your current employer about what you are doing when applying for the job from the beginning. It's a great way to demonstrate your integrity and future leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. And I just want to clarify, you were giving the board legal advice. I just wondered, are you admitted to the bar in Nevada?
That's very funny, Madam President. Thank you.
I'm just asking.
Natha Anderson.
Let me create a record on this open meeting law issue. Just to be clear, the open meeting law isn't invoked unless this committee actually creates a subcommittee, which is exactly why you didn't do that. You left it up to JG Consulting to create the subcommittee, and so there is no issue under NRS 241. With regard to NRS 239, we've already been working with JG Consulting, and they understand what needs to be done. And so I'm confident that we are well within parameters of NRS 241 and NRS 239.
Thank you, Counsel. Ms. Anderson.
Good evening again. Natha Anderson on behalf of WEA. And also I kind of feel like I'm representing a few other employees as well. I totally I do not envy your job. Holy cow. You've got a lot of people to work through in a very short amount of time. But I also have to say how disappointed I was with that answer when it came to the bargaining units. That it was it felt like, I'm sure unintentionally, and probably because of how tired I am and also because of how worried I am about the snow, it felt like the employees were almost not at the same level as the businesses and the other companies that are being consulted at this time. I'm sure that was unintentional, but I just want to say again and stand up for my fellow employees that it's very important that we are involved in this, and ask again that it be a little bit more directed, whether it is through the collective bargaining units leadership or through very directed conversations with the principals as one group, educators as another group, secondary counselors, let's just say, as another group, bus drivers as a third group, whatever the case may be. I just wanted to stand up for our employees and ask that there be a very defined role that they would have. And then another group, because again, standing up for my other fellow unions, I did not see the Northern Nevada Labor Council listed. And that is a very important group for many of us. And so I would ask for them also to be included if possible.
That's great.
Thank you.
Good
And again,
suggestion.
I do not envy your job. So thank you so much for that consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, and that's a great suggestion. I think with no disagreement, we would add that to the list of suggestions. And I do want to state, this board has been, throughout this process, I think, very vocal about the desire to include employees and also students in this process, because we know they are the most important customers of the leadership of the new superintendent. So we absolutely agree that that's a high priority.
The bargaining units are listed.
They are. I think what Ms. Anderson was saying is it just didn't sound like we were giving that enough emphasis. We said, yeah, they're on the list. And I just want to reiterate that we have throughout this been, and Mr. Guerra has also heard that. Mr. Caudill?
So I know we took a motion and had a vote on the list. So can I make? Do I have to?
We haven't voted.
Oh, we didn't vote yet?
No, we haven't
Oh, it's
voted.
pending. Can I add? Can I make an amendment to add?
You certainly
the
can.
Northern Nevada
and
Labor
I
Council?
also added, well, okay, yeah, I just said we would add that to the suggestion. So yes, that should be added. Who was the maker of our motion? Okay, and is that okay with you, Mr.
Yes, it
Kelly?
is, Madam President.
And you're the seconder, so, okay, so we have an amended motion. Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a question. I have a question. I have a recommendation around the grouping of some of a couple of them. Should that be a part of the motion, or should I just get with James?
I would say just get with James.
Yeah.
I think we're adopting the list, and how James organizes the list is is a tactical thing. So
Awesome. It's something really small.
Is that okay?
So.
Okay.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
All right. Is everybody clear about the motion? I think everything that we've talked about would be included, and as well as Northern Nevada Labor Council, and an emphasis on employees and students. Where are, the Student Advisory Council is here. Okay, good. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. And James, thank you so much for your dedication to this. We know you're very passionate about it and have been hard at work already, so we appreciate that. Okay, let's go on to the survey questions. Do we have any suggestions on the survey questions? Any comments? I just had a question about how you will be sorting through what could potentially be thousands of responses to open-ended questions. I know that's a pretty difficult thing, so I just wanted to ask how that's going to happen.
So as a team, we review the responses probably on a weekly basis, because we'll get automated notifications as the day passes. Each day that we have the online survey up, I'll receive an email alert to say you have, for example, we're conducting a search in another state right now, 27 new responses as of today. So we go through them and we do our best to capture as much. We could identify, based on our experience, common themes, and that's what we're looking for, is consistency and continuity with regard to the questions that are there. The beauty of having the premium subscription is that we're provided with charts and graphics that kind of break some of this down. So the ones that have numeric value, we can see where there's stronger emphasis, and we can have pie charts and graphs to illustrate to you and to the community what the overwhelming response is in favor of or not in favor of, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So that's how we're able to aggregate a lot of what is shared with us.
Okay, and what's the timeline for the survey?
That's at the board's discretion and the community's discretion. We can leave it open indefinitely as we continue through the search process. We can close it at any point. So it's just a click of a button. The beauty of having an online platform is we can turn it off at any time. We typically have it up during this period of time through the remainder of the community stakeholder meetings, but we want to be available and include everyone in this process. So if we decide to keep it open, that's perfectly fine too. And we could provide regular updates where we are with it and, you know, traditional milestones if we wanted to do that way as well.
Yeah, I wanted to warn you because when we do our budget surveys, we get thousands of responses. So, and it's great. We love getting that input from the community, and I expect that we will get thousands of responses to this. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, so I hope we get thousands. I think that'd be great. I wanted on the questions, James, and I know this is just to get an idea from the community, those things that they think are important. We don't have anything, and I'm looking specifically at question number one. We're asking them what kind of experience do we want the candidates to have, and personally, I would like to give the community an opportunity to weigh in on how important they think a commitment or experience in diversity and equity are. I mean, it's one of the things. It's important to me, and then when you think about the fact that we're a majority minority district, we certainly want a leader who's going to know how to handle that and actually maximize it for all students. So I know this is simply community weigh-in, and they may say they don't care about it at all, and that would be all right. You know, that would be all right. I'm going to hear about it anyway, but still, I'd like to get there just to see where that is and just see where our community falls in terms of that, knowing the makeup of our district and the growing community that we have.
Okay, that's fair. If I may just think about the verbiage and the language for that new item, and I can share that with staff, and then they can share that with each of you just for your approval.
Yeah.
Unless you have a specific statement you'd like to include now.
Yeah, we can't do it that way, James.
Okay.
So maybe you can play with some language while we're having the conversation, and then we could vote on that, on adding it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I'll try to think something off the cuff too.
Okay. Yeah, we would need to.
I can get something together before we're
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments?
Do others think that's important? I guess that's part of the asking.
Yeah, absolutely, I do. Yeah. Okay, Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I had a question about number 1.4, where it says experience. One of the questions, experience as an assistant superintendent or superintendent in a comparable district. I'm just wondering about the word comparable, because I would think a superintendent of a district of 25,000 students, I mean, that's not comparable to ours, but that still would be someone that might have all the qualifications and experience that we would need. I'm just wondering if that word comparable could be taken out, and that way we don't that way the community doesn't automatically think that anyone that was an assistant or a superintendent at a smaller or larger district than ours is not going to be considered at all. So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just take out the in a comparable district piece. And frankly, probably a lot of people responding to the survey wouldn't know what comparable districts were anyway. So that's a tough one. Vice President Raymond?
I kind of had the opposite feeling actually in reading that one. I've had a lot of feedback from the community about that they are interested in a candidate that has served in a large school district or a school district of a comparable size to ours. And I was wondering if we should just be more specific and say, get, a range of a student population in there, or, more than a certain number, because it just keeps coming up in these conversations that I've had that it's important to people, I guess. So.
And I kind of feel the opposite way. I'd like to open it up to people that are non-traditional candidates potentially, and maybe from small districts or very huge districts that are not comparable to ours.
Well, I think we should have a range, but I think it'd be interesting to get the perception of the community, because I think, there's some feedback about, well, just hire a principal, from a school. I think that would suggest maybe people don't understand the size of our district, or not that maybe they could do it, but then I think there are people who feel that because of our size that the person should have had experience in a comparably sized district. And I think we should have a variety of candidates, but I'm wondering, maybe it's just the wording. It should be, do you think the experience they've had in the size of their district should matter? I agree that it shouldn't limit us, but I just would be interested in getting the feedback from the community about whether or not they think that that is important.
Others? Trustee Caudill?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I read that, I didn't really see that at all on either side. I think I looked at it as, are we asking the community, do they want someone that has that upper management experience at all, versus what kind of district that you have experience being a superintendent or an assistant superintendent or deputy superintendent, versus not really caring what size district. And if someone really wants to talk about that, they could do it in the open answer question. I mean, is that kind of why that's there, to try to see if it's important in the community that they've that upper management experience, or was it geared towards the size of the district?
That's right. Well, a culmination of both, I would say, to that question. We want to gauge the community's sense of the importance and the depth of experience in a complex system like Washoe County School District. So if you started in the traditional pathway, to your point about non-traditional candidates, into the traditional candidates, you start as a teacher, you move up to mid-management, the principalship, central office into some capacity. So this is trying to gauge that and be kind of broad. But if we'd like to, reword this in any fashion, we can certainly do that.
Let's ponder that one a little bit. Yes, Trustee Raymond, and then I have a comment. Oh, okay. I think two things. One, experience in financial management would be, it's not just finances, but it's in financial management. And then to the point about leadership in a large organization, this is clearly, 3 of the 5 are about education experience. And one of the things that I hear a lot from folks is a desire for executive level leadership in a large organization. It doesn't have to necessarily be education, but so if we could add something that references executive level leadership in a large or complex organization, I think that would help me. Mm-hmm. Yes, Trustee Caudill.
So with that point that you made, that would cover the complex management or organization. Then maybe for the superintendent, so number 4, we just simply ask experience as an assistant superintendent or superintendent in a school district. Because if they're both important to, let's say, the community, that would imply we want someone who's coming from a large or comparable school district, because it's a complex organization and superintendent experience.
Right. Okay.
So you're kind of separating them, but you're still getting to where I think we all want to go.
That makes sense.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion, Dr. Taylor?
Suggested wording?
Yeah, please.
See what you think about this, James, and I'm thick-skinned, so if it's bad, you can just tell me. Proven commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion for staff and students.
I think it's great.
Good.
It works.
Okay.
Good.
Well done.
Okay.
Proven commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion for staff and students.
Thank you. Okay. Any others? Okay, so we will want to do a motion on this one, and we'll certainly take public comment at the appropriate time, but let me just summarize what I have heard. So we would be adding Trustee Taylor's comments that she just made. We would modify Roman numeral 1 under 1 and say experience in financial management. And then under Roman numeral 4, the suggestion was experience as an assistant superintendent or superintendent, because it is a school, well, in a school okay, that's who is superintendent, but we can add that in school district. And then adding experience in executive level leadership in a large complex organization. Anything else? Okay, is there any public comment on this, JJ? Okay. Is there a motion to that effect of what I just read? Trustee Kelly?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Caudill. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Oh,
I just want to make sure this is for the whole survey, though, not just question one.
Well, if anybody has more.
No, I don't. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay, yeah, okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Great. Thank you, James.
Good work, board. Thank you.
Thank you. Good work by you.
No, it's a team effort again. The staff has been terrific, wonderful. Mr. Lombardo has been readily available for helping me and guiding me down the straight and narrow. Want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving.
As
Be safe
you.
home.
Yes.
Safe
Safe
travels this
travels.
evening.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for making the trip up here before the holiday and
my
taking
pleasure.
time to be here tonight when it probably would have been easier for you to just call it in. So I appreciate your being here, and
We
I
absolutely
do hope that you don't have any trouble getting home with the weather. So.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Give
All
those
right.
girls
Thank
a hug
you.
at home.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay. I think that I will have a mutiny on my hands if I don't call for a break. Is that correct? So can we take 15 minutes? Okay, we'll be back in 15 minutes, and until then we're in recess. Thank you. All right. Oops. We're back in session for this November 26th meeting of the Board of Trustees, and we are at item 4.07, which is presentation and discussion of the status of the development of a district strategic technology plan and possible action to provide direction to Interim Superintendent Dr. Krista McNeil regarding the technology plan. Who's leading off? Robert? Okay. Why don't you lead off, Robert, and all your colleagues can introduce themselves for the record as well.
Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, Interim Superintendent McNeil, members of the board. We really appreciate the opportunity to provide you a progress update on the District Strategic Technology Plan tonight. And this may be the first example of adding members to a presentation which actually shortens the length of the presentation.
Ooh. Ooh. All right.
So I would like to introduce on my right, Joe Ernst, Area Superintendent, Mark Mathers, Chief Financial Officer, Rick Harris, Special Projects Administrator, and on my left is Deborah Beiersdorf, Chief Academic Officer, and Pete Etchart, Chief Operating Officer.
Excellent.
And I'll pass it off to Rick.
Okay.
Madam President, Dr. McNeil, Board of Trustees, I just want to say one thing. Thank you for allowing me to do some of this work. It's been really great to be back, and I really appreciate it, and looking forward to this project and others. But thank you. This is the first time I interacted with you, so thank you.
And thank you for coming back, Rick. And we know you had great success in all of the things you've done for the district, and we're really grateful that you're back on the team. So thanks for standing up.
As am I.
You betcha. All right, so here we go. The first slide here is our overview. So we've color coordinated this. There's actually five big areas that we're going to be jumping into, and so each one we'll go through. And first one is this comprehensive plan is part of our pathway. So we everyone we talk to say, this is one of those things where you get 100%, yeah, it's a great idea to have a comprehensive plan around this. No one's saying we shouldn't have it, but we really want to do it right, and we're looking at the current state of our technology district-wide and what we'd like to see in the future. One theme you're going to hear us tonight talk about is a lot of stakeholder input and consultation throughout the process.
I came up fast.
Told you.
He wasn't kidding. He's going to move fast. So good evening, Deborah. For the record, Deborah Beiersdorf, Chief Academic Officer. And I want to just quickly say, too, that being part of the process so far has been really good work from my perspective. Because you think technology and you think, well, how is that going to interact with the teaching and the learning and the professional development, the decisions we made around curriculum, and the list goes on, and it very much so does impact the work in the Office of Academics. So I get to kind of lead off with the why. And we've kind of bucketed here just to try to really emphasize the role and the importance of a strategic plan for all the stakeholders that we serve in our community. And we're going to start with our kids, with our students. You'll recall several board meetings ago, myself and others came and presented to you the digital curriculum plan and where we're at, and all the combined efforts of so many folks across offices and departments. So I like to kind of ask you to keep that in the back of your mind as I move my way through here. So student learning, and how can technology support the learning that's happening in the classroom, and the work that I think you're familiar with as well from prior presentations around equitable access and what it means for our kids to have equity in the materials that they have in their classrooms and the materials that our teachers have at their fingertips as well. And a strategic technology plan is not just about the devices and the hardware and the things that are in the walls and that are up on boards such as one in front of us, but it also supports the teaching and the learning that's happening in our classroom. A strategic technology plan can also help support the 21st century technology skills that are so important for our students. So how are they consumers of information? If they're doing research online, how do they know what they're researching is correct? How can they keep themselves safe when they engage with their friends and they engage with others online as well? And just so you know, K-12 now, we have digital citizenship lessons that are now in place in our schools too. So a strategic technology plan should take that into consideration as well. And then career college readiness, and then the pathway to graduation. Technology and access to technology and how to use technology is sprinkled all the way along when our kids graduate and they go into the world of work, or they go to the military, or they go to the university, or they go to Truckee Meadows Community College. These are vital skills. They need to know how to use an Excel spreadsheet. They need to know how to do a presentation. They need to know how to put their thoughts together and collaborate with others, and a strategic technology plan can support that. For our staff, there will never ever be enough coaches and support to get out to all of our teachers that I think we would like to see. So how can we be smart in using technology to support the professional learning needs of all of our staff members, not just our teachers in the classroom, but across the district? We have examples now, I think you're aware of blended learning models. We have examples of professional development that's fully online. We have a very robust professional growth system that is online that uses technology as well, and is a great tool for teachers, for example, to interact with supervisors as they collect evidence of learning and evidence of their work as they move through each school year to a final evaluation. For the community, we hear, and I know you do as well, we hear time and time again, how are we preparing our students to leave us when they graduate and go out into the world work or higher education, and the skills that employers, business and industry would like to see. And a lot of that is around technology. And while it may not be specifically around a certain kind of technology or that, but can students manage it? Do they understand, again, how to navigate, how to research, how to get information, and how to use technology to work with each other? Safety, security, and I think Robert's going to jump in here a little bit as well, but from my perspective, we have a lot of programs and online tools for our students and that our teachers use as well. YouTube and math programs for intervention, and there's a long list, but we take it very seriously that the materials that we put in the hands of our teachers and our students are vetted and they are safe, and student data privacy is being protected. As a matter of fact, about a year or so ago, we started a project that we're going through every supplementary program that we have out in our schools to make sure that it's meeting a high threshold for safety and security for our students. And then the cybersecurity on that second bullet under safety and security, Robert can speak to what happens on a daily basis, I think. But then as we look to roll out and be nimble about our career and tech ed programs, what about cybersecurity? We know that's not going away. That's going to be a huge need as we move forward. So again, technology very much so is part of would be part of that programming as well. I'll stop there and turn it over to Robert.
Thanks, Debbie. For the record, Robert Sidford, Chief Information and Innovation Officer. I actually don't have anything to add. I think she did a fantastic job on that. The only thing I would say is under the governance and alignment piece that we obviously recognize that having stakeholder input is critical, not just during the building of this plan, but as we implement a plan as well. And so to make sure that we've got appropriate IT governance in place to make sure that we can act upon the recommendations in this plan.
And just want to clarify under sustainability and system support, I know one of the big tactical issues is having enough up-to-date devices that are working in the classroom, and our at this point our inability to fund a refresh program, to fully fund a refresh program. I know my colleagues and I, when we visit classrooms, see stacks and stacks of devices that aren't working, and it's nobody's fault. We just can't get there, and so I'm assuming that's part of sustainability and system support.
For the record, Robert Sidford, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. We'll keep going. We'll just stop you, trustees. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll get them. Okay.
Okay, Madam President, Interim Superintendent McNeil, Board of Trustees,
Joe
Joe Ernst, Area Superintendent, just try to stay within those protocols.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here to speak about the current realities in schools. And really the short of it is that there is a wide range of technology in schools, and there's a wide range of implementation around 21st century learning. When we look at some exemplary schools, we'll take, for example, Corbett Elementary School, a school that's been fortunate to receive various grant fundings, and being able to braid that together with revitalization fundings to really be able to have some strong technology in their building. What we see with the schools that are really effective in accessing technology and using it in conjunction with 21st century learning is they are very intentional about their outcomes and their professional development plan that they're putting forth with their teachers. They access internal supports at the school level, and then they do a great job accessing external supports to build the capacity to use the technology and provide 21st century instruction at ideal levels. And so what you see too is it really leads to improved learning. It increases our student achievement. And this year with Corbett, we have a 4-star school as one of our acceleration schools. So that's an example of that. Then we look to Sky Ranch. Sky Ranch, really a school that we're all very proud of. It has elite facilities, tremendous access to technology. It really has provided us with an opportunity to take a much deeper dive at how we want to look at our technology strategic plan district-wide. We see what it can look like ideally at a school, and now it gives us an opportunity to think, how do we scale out some of these practices district-wide? What you see there is you see one-to-one technology with really a focus on collaboration among students, grade levels, departments. And really one of the big differences you see at a school with one-to-one technology is the depth of how the technology is used on a daily basis. When laptops are in students' hands each and every day, teachers can count on that. They know that they can provide instruction through that, as opposed to, saying, a laptop cart that goes from teacher to teacher on Monday over here, Tuesday over here, at 10 o'clock in this classroom, and at 11 o'clock in this classroom. You also see the actual teaching infrastructure is really incredible, with the various monitors that are in place, the collaboration spaces. And so what you see at a school like Sky Ranch is you see teachers that really become more and more reliant and the ability to provide the best 21st century learning, because they know the regularity of the technology is there day in and day out. So that's there. And then one of the other things that you see with a Sky Ranch, and that gives us some food for thought, is one-to-one. When you have one-to-one laptops in buildings, we know that it increases the student ownership of the device, as opposed to saying the laptop cart that goes from place to place, I pull it out, I put it over here, and maybe you don't have that same degree of responsibility. And so again, the example with Sky Ranch on the current realities, it's really an exemplary 21st century learning environment. Okay. Then we go to another school, Spanish Springs Elementary School, a school that does not have grants, does not have the same type of revitalization, but has a stakeholder drive in wanting to have more technology and 21st century learning in the community. Some of those students eventually feed Sky Ranch, just some of them. And so what we see, and this is really, I think, at the backbone of the need for our technology plan. In the absence of a plan, principals and schools try to be creative to meet the needs of all stakeholders. Similar to the example that was provided earlier. Some schools might access a type of laptop that as a district we can no longer support when we're looking at the ability to support all of our schools. But what happens is the schools develop their own plans, and they're really being creative in addressing a desire for 21st century learning. For example, Spanish Springs Elementary School, they held a parent demonstration night. Brought in parents. They explained how the learning and how the teaching will be different. We had folks from the 21st Century Department that were there that helped. And then what they did is, from that, they were able to get an understanding of parents' commitment to technology in the school. And so what they presented was a survey, a really comprehensive survey around different options: leasing to own, eliminating class fees as a means to potentially buy more technology. And so they really went over that kind of comprehensively. And then what they have done is they've been able to put together a plan where it starts in third, in this case, starts in third grade and kind of follows the kids through fourth to fifth grade. So again, a singular plan, though, a singular plan that's different than all of the other schools. Again, very creative, innovative, working to address some of the desires of the community, but individual to specific schools.
And isolated, I might add.
Correct, and isolated. Yeah. And so I think really that's what compels us to get to this district-wide strategic plan. By having a larger system alignment, I think we can come up with a more systemic way to support 21st century learning in our schools. And so that's really kind of the current realities. Mr. Harris is going to speak to a previous experience that he's had to show you what it looks like on the other end of a less technological rich school.
So our last example is Galena High School. And last year when I was intern principal, I had quite the experience of walking in the classroom, and exactly how Mr. Ernst described it. I'd go into one classroom and it would blow me away what the individual teacher was doing. All the kids would be using their cell phones, interacting with the teacher. doing wonderful things around technology, and I'd go 2 doors down, and I would never see any technology in that room. It's just a huge range. I would go to another classroom where we had utilized carts really well, and some teachers would really be working with that technology that was there. Almost everybody uses the screens, the projectors, and some smart boards. But some rooms we had wonderful technology, and some you don't have any. And I think that's kind of where we're at with our district. When you would look at the whole district, it's very similar to Galena High School. You have these wonderful examples of technology-rich schools, and then you have some that don't have the grant funding, and you don't have whatever, or the maintenance, and they're struggling. So that's just a good example of our current reality.
So, Mark Mathers, CFO, so to kind of continue on that theme, obviously part of the reason why we have this issue of kind of equity and the dispersion of sophistication in our schools in terms of devices is our financial reality. And all of you know we've made deep cuts in the budget to balance our budget. And one of the primary areas that has suffered, that is now being underinvested in, is technology. And so that is our current reality that we need to overcome and address in this plan. But more than that, we need a sustainable source of funding. So when we talk about devices, it's not just the initial purchase of the device, it is the cyclical replacement or refresh of those devices. It is also operating costs. It takes staff to maintain and service those devices that we don't fund currently. And then, as Joe and Debbie talked about, there's professional development as well. So all of those things need to be funded and contemplated in a plan. And candidly, I mean, it's hard not to see where there will need to be some prioritization for the district. It is hard to envision us being able to fund, at least in the near term, all that we would want to do. So ultimately, I think that's going to come back to the board to see that kind of level of prioritization. In terms of what we do currently, Joe and Debbie and Rick have touched on a lot of this, but in fiscal year 19, we actually spent $6.8 million on devices. And I should have said on the prior slide, we've actually have ramped up funding in our capital plan for IT infrastructure, the infrastructure behind the walls. And so that has been done. But in terms of devices, we spent $6.8 million, but unfortunately, a great deal of that either came through bond funds, $2.8 million, and that was largely our new schools, or, as has been mentioned, grant funds, either title monies or Zoom monies that we've used, again, to buy devices. But again, the sustainability of that is a real serious issue, right? In 3 years' time, when those devices need to be replaced, or 4 years' time, what will be the funding source for that? And so this shows, in terms of general funding of devices, it's only $500,000 per year currently. And that's actually at the school sites, more than centrally funded. You'll also see there that booster clubs, like at Spanish Springs, have helped to fund devices in schools. So another $500,000 or so to $600,000 has come through student activity funds. But again, the question is that sustainable? Yeah. You can get people excited to buy new devices, but it's harder to get people excited to replace those devices. Mm-hmm. So this is our challenge in terms of developing a plan. Certainly the financial realities we face is a huge issue that needs to be addressed in the plan.
Okay, next we're going to move into the plan development, and this is a draft protocol. Want your feedback, and if there's anything we're missing, please let us know. The next couple of slides, we're going to talk about the work teams that we have, and we truly are starting from the ground up. Some key work teams we have is a Strategic Technology Planning Task Force, which I'll just refer to as Task Force from here on out. We're going to talk more about the Growth and Technology Working Group and our district leadership. As we work through these teams, we've already have emerging themes. There's no shortage for topics and themes in this work. We just listed a couple there. The short time that we've had the task force together, we've already identified 50 themes, and it's growing daily. The first team I'd like to talk about, we're really proud of this team. It is the task force that we've put together. in the last, at the end of October. We started meetings in November. But as you look through the membership there, you'll see we have teachers at every level. We have administrators at every level. We have district department representation from all of the departments that interact with the technology. We have representation from all of our associations. So it's a great group, a high energy group that's where the groundwork starts. Only had 2 meetings, but extremely proud of what we've done. It's been amazing that we've already created working agreements that everybody agreed to and working norms. I already mentioned the topics we've already identified. We've already broke the task force into topic teams that can start really digging into the work and then work through the task force. We've made substantial progress on our needs assessment. Just like you were doing tonight for the superintendent search, we've done the same thing, what our surveys will look like, how we'll do the focus groups, and gather input from all our stakeholders. So this task force will then take all that input and through our needs assessment and make drafts, come together, all those work teams, and then provide the leadership back to the representation of the groups, and then bring it forward to our growth and technology working group.
So Pete Etchart, COO. So about 5 years ago, we created the Growth and Overcrowding Working Group to deal with one of the most pressing issues the district was facing, school overcrowding. Now, thankfully, based on the progress we have made toward this issue in the district, we have transitioned this working group toward another issue that is obviously paramount to our district in technology. So this is the group that will provide direction and feedback to the task force and will ultimately forward the proposed strategic district plan to the district leadership team. Now, this working group, which meets weekly, is a diverse and comprehensive team of academic, operational, and communication professionals that we believe will provide the same excellent direction and feedback to the development of this strategic plan as they previously did with the school overcrowding issue.
Thank you. This is my favorite slide. We start with a little work groups, and our vision is that we're going to really do research and hit the ground hard there. We bring that to the whole, those ideas to the task force in a whole group setting, and then ideas kick back and forth. So those arrows you notice will go each way through the ground up, narrowing, prioritizing, refining, and then presenting drafts until we finally get a product. And that's pretty much, I think, what I said on that. And then, of course, we have a goal of, keeping the board in the loop and getting feedback from the board, and then implementing. We have a very ambitious timeline, and we're going to do the best we can to stick to this timeline, but we're also going to, quality is very important. And when we first started working on the plan, we took a major step back because we did not have the task force in place, and we could see right away, you know what, we could get a plan together, but it's not what this board wants. So we have backed up. We've done some great work with the task force. We'll be working through the task force, doing our needs assessment kind of in 3 phases, looking at the current state, making plans, kicking those back and forth amongst the different groups, bringing you updates. But we will guarantee you, as we're working through this, it's kind of like you're sailing a ship and working out at the same time. We will be bringing short-term and long-term target goals to the plan itself, and we'll have some type of plan, and it's going to be multi-year. It's going to be in phases is our goal right now.
So again, Deborah Beiersdorf. So in addition to needs assessments and working with our stakeholders, taking into consideration what what it would take to sustain a technology plan, it's very, very important for everyone that's involved in the creation of the plan to make sure that we're doing our research. Rick talked a bit about research. So we wanted to share some different partnerships, best practices that are out there right now in case you might be interested in doing some of your own research as well. I know some of these you're very familiar with, especially Council of Great City Schools. So what are our sister urban district partners doing around a strong technology plan? And sustainability is a challenge for everybody. I haven't come across anything that doesn't list that as if it's not the first problem, it's the second problem or challenge. Also wanted to share too that there's also a lot of information out there from various departments of education across the nation around what a technology plan or what technology does to level the playing field for our students. So when our students leave and go home, what's the access that they have in their home, and their families, their parents and guardians have as well to technology to help support the learning that's happening in school. There's a lot of information out there, studies that have been done to show how important technology is to our kids today. So did you want to add?
For the record, Robert Sidford. Yes, so just as we are looking at national best practices, we're also looking at samples of comparable districts, plans, and I would just emphasize that this is just a sampling. There are a number of plans here that have some relevance to us, but again, this is just a sampling that of similar sized and smaller and larger districts, groups that, districts that are being very intentional around one-to-one environments, groups that are not, groups that are doing lots of different things with technology in education. And so the point here is just that these districts will be added to as we discover more plans that are relevant to us, looking at their practices and informing our practice through that process. So we're not reinventing the wheel necessarily. We're sort of inventing our wheel with a lot of input from different sources. So the national best practices as well as districts' practices that they're finding useful.
Robert and team, I know the Governor's Office of Innovation is working on a lot of this, and how will people like that be actively involved in the preparation of this? Maybe I didn't see the fine print, but I didn't see them in here. People like them. Are they? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Apologize, the microphone wasn't on.
No, that's okay.
President Simon Holland, you're a step ahead of us with one. Our slide here is actually, and I'll pass it off to Rick, but we'll add them to that list.
Yeah, in this part, we talked a lot about internal, from the ground up work and getting all the stakeholders involved. What we're planning on do too, as you can see the list we have here, is that outside the eyes. There's many organizations in the community that are doing the same work and doing it very well. So our plan is to take these and bounce them off of them, even some of our vendors, to see, what can be the best plan at the end.
Mm-hmm. And I know we aren't using Google anymore, but I think they certainly have, going forward, I don't know that we want to exclude them from being a part of the conversation, because I know they're doing a lot of research in that arena as well.
Yeah, anyone else that we've missed, when you review that, please let us know. I just added Google. We can't have enough partners.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, closing comments that you want to make, or we'll go to questions and public comment if you want. Well, if there's something you wanted to add, Robert, go ahead.
No, just appreciate the opportunity to present this, and I'd be happy to, the team would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. And thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone that's working on this. I know when we went to the interim superintendent's casual conversations, technology was certainly a pain point for employees in the district, and for a lot of different reasons, it's a pain point, it's an opportunity point for a lot of people, and we really appreciate all the work that's going into this. I personally want to make sure that that we are reaching outside the organization and not just, talking to each other, even though that is really important, and I appreciate that we're collaborating internally. That's one of my biases, that sometimes when people have a totally different perspective and they aren't used to our system and they aren't used to the conversations that we have, they can really give us some new perspectives. Questions or comments at this point? Vice President Raymond?
Thank you all so much. I thought that was really informative, and I really like the plan and the process that you're going to go through to get us to a good place. I just had a couple of questions. So, and is digital citizenship going to be built into this technology plan, or does that sort of live outside of it as more of a curriculum component?
For the record, Robert Sidford, that's a great question. We actually already have a digital citizenship curriculum and lessons that we use K through 12, but that obviously would be a critical component for a number of reasons. Obviously that's an important need for our students to be able to operate appropriately and safely in a digital world. But also we're actually required to have a digital citizenship curriculum to comply with the Children's Internet Protection Act, along with our filtering that we do. So.
I had the opportunity to go to a speaker last week, a national speaker about addiction to technology that the College of Med had in town, and he just really pressed how important that is, not just on a once a year basis, but I mean, he really kind of said a weekly basis, which I know is a lot, but I think it just should be really intertwined into the use of technology on a weekly, daily, monthly, whatever basis, and would hope it would also include just a little bit too about rest from screens and technology, and kind of awareness of how much time you're on it versus not. And I think that's not to say anything about the use of it in the classroom as much as, I mean, it's really when kids get home and the iPad is the babysitter, or the, what they're using for every entertainment experience. So I think the more we can teach them now about, what it looks like to be addicted, and that sort of stuck with me after that. And then I think the last thing, I would just ask, how will or is there already conversation or thought around how do we have a strategic plan like this and still allow for autonomy and creativity and ingenuity in schools and in classrooms, and not just the actual physical device, but the use of it and how they're, I hope that is being thought about, because I think those of us that were at the NASB conference this weekend got to see an amazing keynote about how technology can be used in the classroom, and I'd love for every teacher to be doing that, but I don't know that it works for every teacher, and I would want there to be the ability for our teachers and principals to kind of know what the right fit for their classroom is.
For the record, Robert Sidford, I can respond to that. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point that we have to be very aware of. One of the challenges we have is, and as Mark alluded to, the issue of that we don't currently have an adequate refresh program for devices, which means that we don't necessarily have a stable and equitable foundation for schools and for teachers to be able to create and and innovate with the tools that they have. And so providing that kind of foundation is, I think, one of the challenges we have, so that our schools really do have that opportunity to say, okay, when we want to innovate with this, maybe we want to do, I'm just going to make this up, but maybe a robotics program that would be tied to devices in some way. Okay. That we have the foundation for that, and we can then innovate in these ways that are really good for kids.
So the focus is more on the physical device and less setting up a set of criteria that you would only use Dreambox and not Prodigy, and you would only use I don't know what other examples I don't have. But.
For the record, Robert Sidford, yeah, I think all of that comes into the conversation, and that'll be kind of worked through with the work groups in terms of how they determine, what are these core things that we need to make sure that we provide as a district, obviously within our capacity to do so, and then what things might be extensions of that.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I do have one more that I wasn't going to ask, but I think I will. So I assume, though, that they're considering the task force and the other group are. I'm wondering then, how does the financial realities work into the conversation? Are they limiting their ideas based on what is feasible, or are they aiming for the moon and knowing that we might not be able to get there? Or
For the record, Robert Sidford. So there's actually one of the work groups is a budget and sustainability group. So I think that's going to be kind of an interplay between or among the groups, and then not just between the work groups and the task force, but then the task force and the growth and technology working group as well.
Thank you.
Dr. McNeil.
So first of all, I just want to thank the team. I got a phone call a few weeks ago, actually, when we were bringing forth the draft technology plan, and I got a phone call, and when your team says it's not baked and it's not ready to go forward, you listen to your team. And so the team went back to the drawing board, and I mean back to the drawing board, because we don't know at this point in time. We don't know if one-to-one is the right way to go. We cannot honestly sit here today and say that one-to-one is the best way to go. We have some pilots that are working extremely well. Mr. Ernst was talking with me the other day, saw some dynamic, absolutely some of the best teaching he has seen in one of our one-to-one schools. We go to another school that doesn't have one-to-one, and yet you see some dynamic teaching and you see kids learning and engaged. And so we need to have a holistic approach. We need to have a process in which we do get stakeholder, internal and external, in order to do this the right way. I mean, it's something to go out and to talk to the community members, as President Simon Holland has alluded to, and there's concern and there's trepidation. I know there's concern and trepidation around the financial part, but this is something that we need in order for our district to move forward and in order for our students to be better prepared. It's not even for the 21st century. It's the next step, and it's just in a few years. So I just really appreciate the time and the energy that all of you, that our working group, that our task force is putting into this, because it's something that is so critically important, and we haven't done it yet for our district. So thank you.
Yeah, kudos. Trustee Caudill.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm going to try to get it all. So I want to piggyback off of what Interim Superintendent McNeil said. This really kind of became part of my thought process and being a board member when I went to Shaw in the spring, and the parents were super upset because they believe that the quality of education that the students would be receiving that were quoted as having to still stay at Shaw versus going to Sky Ranch was going to be different. So those kids are going to get a better education than ours because of one-to-one. I think that is not reality. I think that is the first thing about our technology, is that just because you have technology doesn't mean everything's going to be great. It comes down to our teachers. I think all of us don't remember circumstances of our education. We remember the great teachers we had. And so it's encouraging our teachers, and it's encouraging parents and students that it's all about education is about the relationships. Technology supplements that. It's not everything. And I think that we're seeing some of that in our district, especially as we rezone. It's like, well, those kids get to go to a better school and have a better education than ours. And I think that's an issue, and sometimes we hear that with technologies. I've heard it in Spanish Springs. And so as we're doing this, I think we need to emphasize good teaching tactics and building relationships and how to use technology to emphasize that, but it's not all about technology. And I think that's the message with our teachers, and don't become so over-reliant on technology, because you lose the piece that really matters, that's relationship building with students. And to encourage parents that just because school X might have more technology in a school that your children attend doesn't mean the education is better. It's good education, it's different. And so I think that message has to be sent, because we're going to have a hard time ever getting everyone at the same point. And I'm looking at Mr. Mathers, who's probably like, I mean, it's going to be hard to ever do. So there's got to be a different way to message this in our district, because that bothered me, because especially in Spanish Springs, we've always had really one middle school, and it's like the others. They get to go somewhere and have a better education, and we're left behind. It's like that can't be the messaging, and we're never going to win that messaging battle, so to speak. So that's what I would say about this. This is great. I'm glad we're doing this, but the emphasis has to be on what makes a great education, and that's going to be the relationships that the students and our teachers and those in our schools have in building up young people. The technology is a part of the journey. It's not the whole thing. So this is great, but this really has become a big part of my life over the last few months. But so I appreciate your presentation today.
A lot of tough choices ahead of everybody. Very difficult choices, but we need to do it, and it's very exciting and very much appreciated that you are doing it. Speaking to Vice President Raymond's concerns about that tension between making sure that there's an equitable foundation versus allowing for creativity, I know there's a cost associated with having people do what is the app du jour that they love and have learned about at a conference. And so will technical standards and like application standards be part of it? Because I know how difficult it is for your staff to support hundreds of different applications, and if it's not going to be supported, we're going to have a tough time having it be launched successfully and then be aligned on a sustainable manner.
For the record, Robert Sidford, and I think that alludes to some of the things Mark was talking about around, making sure that, we're considering the choices that we have within the capacity to make those decisions. And so, I think that's absolutely part of what the task force and the working groups will be focused on. I know that there are work groups that are focused on that. There are members of the Office of Information Technology on the task force, and we'll be doing that work, because you're absolutely right. That is sort of what makes a plan like this happen. On the back end, where most people don't see what happens in there in IT, and so yes, that's absolutely a critical component.
Also, another question: will you be looking at the life cycle of some of our major enterprise-wide kind of things, like our financial system and our HR system? Because I can imagine those have been in place for quite a while, and a installation of a new enterprise system for finance, for example, is a many millions of dollars of cost. Just
Robert Sidford, you just scared me. but you're right. Our ERP, our SIS, those systems that run, basically are the backbone of what we do, are critical components here. And there is a work group looking at critical business systems.
Yeah, those are scary. Those are really scary. Okay, any other questions? Public comment?
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Madam President. We support the plan and have a few comments about the plan to develop a technology plan. There are a few weaknesses that we've identified, and they should be corrected immediately. First of all, the words family data privacy must appear in the plan and be a part of the plan. It is soon to become the single biggest issue of the primary election cycle in 2020 and must be in the top 5 priorities, or even the number 1 priority for any Washoe County School District technology plan, or it might fail, or it might not get funded. Where is the budget? Even the most preliminary budget, staff should have an answer for this, be able to tell us right now how much to put one-to-one devices in every school or classroom. Or you could break it down by high school, middle school, like what kind of costs are we looking at? And Madam President, your comment about the enterprise system, spot on. Where are we with that stuff? Because an enterprise system could knock one or more schools out of the queue real fast if that's what we need. And I think I heard you say there's more than one enterprise system that needs updating, so let's get some costs on that. This is not going to be a Christmas tree process, so don't even start down that path. And some of you know what I'm talking about when I use those words. On the inputs page of the plan to develop a technology plan, add stakeholders with technology concerns. I did not see that on there, so I think it should be. You're going to be leaving out one of the most important groups that's key to your success if those people are not included. I would like to see a technology plan website with a large graphical link on the district homepage. On that page, please include the following: all technology and budget information currently and projected, copies of all documentation from the meetings of the strategic planning task force that has already met twice, and the growth and technology working group. That's information the public should be aware of if we're going to have an open and honest conversation, and I think a web page is the best place to do it. You know, I don't want to constantly make Mr. Rombardo and his legal staff do all the homework for everybody else. A web page that has this information gets them out of the loop, and we can all be on the same page when we come to these meetings. You know, there's a question. Every middle school student and high school student and some elementary students have the latest technology in their hands, and more importantly, know how to use it better than most of the adults in the room. So what exactly is the goal? And I know we've talked about that a little bit tonight, but that's a question we should always be asking, and I appreciate the acknowledgement that we're in uncharted territory. Okay, we don't know if this is the right pathway. So I think that should always be a question: is what's the goal, except for the well-established fact of collecting data on every family in the system. Thank you, Madam President. I would appreciate it if these are addressed in the technology plan.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Is there any other public comment? Okay. All right. So we have given you some feedback on some items, and you've been very responsive in anticipating what we would ask. So this is very thorough. It's very well done. Council, I don't know that we need a motion on anything.
I didn't. Excuse me. I didn't hear anything that needed a motion.
Okay. We did provide some suggestions, but I don't think there's anything that rises to the level of a motion to the interim superintendent. But thank you for this tremendous work and the tremendous amount of time that it is going to reflect to do a good job of trying to map out, because in a district our size, how many devices are we now at, Robert? 70,000 something?
Robert Sidford, for the record, we approximately 68,000.
Yeah, 68,000 devices that we are supporting, and that's only one piece of all the things that we need to be doing well for our district to function well, and for our students to get great outcomes, and our educators to feel satisfied and fulfilled in their work. So very important work. We thank you very much, and we know you'll be back. I would just make two requests, and one is that some of the financial information, to the extent that we need to know about things that are either going to take a long lead time to be able to pay for, or that are going to be needed for next year, that we know about those sooner rather than later, so we can incorporate that into our budget decision making. And then the second request I would make is, as you think of policy level decisions that we need to be considering, bring those to us early so that we can talk about them with constituents and have them, reviewed in the public, so nobody is surprised or shocked, and we can have that dialogue with our public. So, okay, I guess we're good on that one. Thank you. Thanks so much for this work. Huge effort. Yeah. Okay. We will move on to our next important topic, which is presentation and discussion, including an update to the review of the West Ed report presented to the board on October 13th, 2015, of findings and recommendations for improving systems within the district to achieve better special education student performance and compliance with relevant federal and state regulations regarding special education, and possible action to provide direction regarding the updated recommendations included in the report. Ms. Van Tress and Ms. Fitzpatrick, welcome. I haven't met you before, but I've heard wonderful things about you, so thanks.
Good evening, President Simon Holland, Interim Superintendent McNeil, members of the board. I am Jennifer Van Trust, Area Superintendent for Area 5 in Special Education. With me tonight is Rory Fitzpatrick, the Program Director at West Ed. So we're here tonight to talk with you about the proposed plan to review and update the 2015 West Ed report. While we are seeing some exciting growth in our graduation rates, we've seen an increase of 37%. We still are not growing for students with IEPs as at the same rate that we are growing for students that are EL free and reduced lunch. So while we have some great success, we still have some room to grow.
But kudos to everyone.
But kudos,
yes, for the
it is
tremendous
fantastic. Yes.
gains.
It is a 37% gain in 4 years, and that's huge. So when we look at our information down at our elementary levels, we are still struggling with our growth. And we had, Mr. Hayes has been here numerous times to show you this information, so this isn't new for you, but I did want to bring this back to your attention while we look at this information. As you can see, the information for IEP for both ELA and math at the elementary level is flatlined, just like district, but flatlined at a low percentage of a 15% rate. And that's a concern as to why we are seeing it at the lower grade levels, that we are not seeing growth. We're also seeing this in the same concern at the middle school level, and actually our numbers are a little even more diminished for IEP growth in the middle school. And also one thing to remember is the fact that IEP students can hit multiple areas. So IEP students can also be considered in our free and reduced lunch, our EL populations, and our CIT populations. So when we're looking at our IEP students, our students with IEPs, we're actually hitting many different categories along our pathway. There's also a handout that you should have with you, which looks at our, again, thank you, Mr. Hayes, our move towards proportionality. This is something also for us to consider when we look at our data for our students with IEPs. And while we are excited about moving towards proportionality for our students with IEPs and AP-IP dual CTE completion for the 18-19 school year, we're still only looking at 0.24 of our IEP students that are actually participating in those programs, which is the lowest area for our students when we look at our student populations. That's a concern. Why do we not have more students with IEPs in those programs? Mm-hmm. In addition, only slightly, but we did see an increase in the number of suspensions. So again, why are we seeing this information? This is a concern for what is happening for our students with our disabilities. So along the lines with our pathway to positive progress, there were three, as part of Interim Superintendent McNeil's pathway, the Office of School Leadership, which now includes the Special Education Department, has been reviewing the information as far as what concerns for low morale, the concern over special education supports, and the teacher and the administrative workload. We're currently reviewing the current practices and policies, and then reviewing the supports to address the low morale and try to develop some short-term plans. But long-term plans, we really truly need to be able to see what our focus is going to be and how can we systemically make these changes, which aligns with Dr. McNeil's pathway to positive progress. Historically, we have, as you're well aware, we have done 2 outside studies to look at special education services. One was the Stetson report from 2010-2011. That resulted in a plan that was developed by Washoe County School District called A Matter of Conscience. That report was actually developed 2 years after Stetson was completed. So there was a plan developed, but it was 2 years after the initial work was completed. So then, where was the connection? Right. So then the next year we had the WestEd report. And then from the WestEd report, there was some information from the Office of Accountability that related back to WestEd. A plan was developed in the 15-16 school year called All Children Matter. That plan was based off of WestEd, but it didn't address all of the components or the concerns through the WestEd report. Then we had another plan. So we had a plan developed in 2015. We had a plan developed in 2016 called the Strategic Plan, and that again was developed by internal staff, which didn't address the same issues from the 2015 report to the 2016 report. And then we came up with the 2018 report, which went back to the All Children Matter, which then addressed different information. So we've done a lot when we've looked at these programs or what the recommendations were, but there wasn't consistency in what the concerns were or what was directed or addressed internal systemic issues out of any of the reports. So when we look at the WestEd report, there were 6 areas that were targeted: culture and climate, compliance, communication, human capital, data systems, and then what we called the stretch goal, which was our resource allocations. We've made progress in some areas. Compliance has made some great growth. In developing procedure manuals, we have Excelify program that's working well to help keep us in line with compliance, but we still have communication breakdowns. The level of information that is going from district level to school sites, we still have some breakdowns, and the messages are not being sent equally, or the same message is not being delivered to schools, and that messages aren't also being delivered to our community and our families. So when you look at some of these areas, we still have a lot of growth, and we need to go back and relook at really truly what was the purpose and how we can better align that information. So I had to throw this in. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. We're in the frame. We are here. We live it every day. And so when you're in it and when you're living it, it's hard to see the big picture. And so working with WestEd and having them continue not only to go back and look at the recommendations, but then to move forward and help support us through the actual implementation of the recommendations from the WestEd report is going to be important. Sorry, skipping. I got it. Okay. So what is the plan and what is the purpose? Right now, we want to create an understanding of what the challenges and success that are currently impacting our students with disabilities. We need to develop an understanding of what the vision is for our students in special education and how to maximize the special education student potential. We're making growth, but are we truly maximizing our students' abilities? We need that information. We need a systemic support plan to make sure that it is impacting district-wide. It is not just one school, it's not one area, it's not one student population. This needs to be systemic. And also, it's after the technology discussion, but we need to see how we're spending our resources and our money. Are we actually getting our bang for the buck? Is it really going back to students and making a difference in the students' lives? So those are the purposes behind the work that we would like to have from WestEd. So the approach would be 3 phases. The first phase would be from January to April, starting in January 2020 through April. And this would be the time that we would be working with WestEd to collect information from our stakeholders. Also to review and refine the Office of School Leadership. Now that special education isn't its own entity. We truly need to look at how we're providing supports through the Office of School Leadership to all of our school sites. What does that look like? What is our organizational chart? How do we best utilize the support systems we have in place? We need to collect the data. We need to get that from our stakeholders, parents, teachers, ESP, community members. All of that information needs to be collected and re-looked at as far as from the original WCSD report, determine what needs to be updated, added, changed, or what we actually have accomplished and can say it is sustained and it's viable. Phase 2 would be from May to July, and that would be in response to the data that we've collected and actually develop the plan and set the goals to actually attaining what we're looking to accomplish. And then, of course, phase 3 is starting in August through 2023 to actually be able to implement the plan that's developed. This can't be a short term. This isn't going to be resolved in short term. This is going to take years to try and make sure that we are getting kids where they need to be and making sure that when they graduate, they are graduating college and career ready, that they have the skills necessary to go out and be successful. So the plan as far as phase 1, these are some of the the groups that we would be targeting. Obviously, we would be looking at our focus groups. We would be asking for individual interviews, surveys, and then document reviews. Our next steps would that we would definitely bring bringing back this information at the end of phase 1 back to you and for your feedback and guidance and information that you feel would help us for our next steps. And then at the end of phase 2, which would be in July, we would then be coming back and presenting the actual plan, the systemic plan moving forward.
Okay, Jen, thank you. And Rory, did you want to add anything before we start asking questions? And
no, for the record, Rory Fitzpatrick with WCSD. Nice to meet you all. I think the last time I was here, I think maybe it's an entirely new board since the last time I was here. Anyway, I'm pleased to be here, and I'm just here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, and just first of all, I want to thank you for courageously trying to face this head on. I think it was very telling when we saw the slide of all the work that's gone before, and I think, you know, while this board is new, we're not completely new, and we all own where we are, and we all know that we're not where we need to be, and we have a huge responsibility to every student, but we have a big responsibility to our students with disabilities to really step up. So. I have a couple of questions, but I'll let Dr. Taylor go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I just wanted to convey on a personal note is that this is urgent. I know we all, in our visits and in our conversations with folks in the community, we have some parents who fight very hard every day for their children to have an adequate experience, and that's, you know, that's part of what they know their life is. I think many of us have had lots of experiences with kids with disabilities, and it is a struggle every day for those families and for those kids. Yesterday morning, I happened to be at North Valley's High School for a presentation by some of the kids that are IEP mentors, and they are kids who have IEPs, helping other students that have an IEP to navigate what it's like. One of the presenters is a young man with autism, and he was introducing himself, and he said that he's like a dish. Autism is the main course, and ADHD is a side dish, or with a side of ADHD. But just some of the wonderful things that are going on, and that group of students is working to help other students feel empowered to be part of their IEP meetings. and to advocate for themselves. But I know it is urgent work. So one question, you don't have to answer it right now, but in the course of our discussion, so what are we doing in November and December? Right. Because this is starting in January, and I know we've got the holidays, but it's urgent for me. A second question, if you could answer as we go, how are we going to get the resources we need to make this happen, to make these, to implement whatever you all come up with needs to happen? We are all going to be faced with some resource challenges, and certainly we know we don't yet get enough resources to support special education, even with the $41 million of supplemental funding from our general fund to what we get from the state. So resources are going to be a big question for me. And then one of the things I also wanted to make sure we flag is the special ed workforce planning. That how are we going to build the pipeline of people who will be the support and the educators and the folks who are going to help make these changes that are so necessary possible. So if you have anything you want to answer now,
I do.
Feel free. And
yes, actually, so currently we have been working, the Office of School Leadership, we've been working with, we have a principals advisory task force. We've been working with the Special Education Advisory Panel, the SEAT panel, which is our community and our parent group. And then actually we met with the department leaders for all the middle and high schools, and we've come to them and said, we want your feedback. We want it now. We need to know what we can fix in short terms, right. And then the long term. So kind of how I picture this is that we've got two lanes going. We've got the fast lane that we need to fix right now. This is stuff that we can handle. We know it needs to be resolved. It needs to be taken care of now. And then we've got, and sorry, Rory, the slow lane that we have West Ed to more look at the long-term approach. What's systemic, right? But sorry, yeah. But the fast lane is what can we do immediately? And the department leaders had some great ideas.
Great.
And they, so we've asked that their entire meeting in January be focused on identifying specific issues and how can we address them now.
I would love for you all to come back in maybe the end of January and give us an update on what are those fixes that you're doing now.
And in addition, we're actually taking time at our next LTL meeting and to meet with all of the principals and ask these same questions. So we're getting the feedback from school administrators. We're going to be getting feedback from SEAP in January, asking these exact same things. So we're targeting those quick ones.
Great.
And then we'll be looking more like what can we do immediately. So as far as resources, that's always a question and concern. But that is also something that Mark Mathers and Mike Schroeder and I I'm meeting weekly with Mike to look at our budget to see where our resources are going, what are they being spent on, where are areas that we need to tighten some things up for that immediate effect, and then again looking long term. We need to streamline our resources. There's a lot of things we need to. Lots of moving parts that shouldn't be moving, and how do we streamline those?
Okay.
So,
and if my colleagues would indulge me, one other question, and then I'll be quiet. Just an ability to clarify for families where they go when they have an issue, because I know they don't all have a clear path, and I'm not sure how best we can communicate that, but I think things escalate very quickly if people don't know how to get help for something that's not going right for them. And so I wanted to flag that as kind of something we make sure gets addressed, maybe in the quick fix.
Yes, definitely that is something that as issues have come up in the district, so those as they are coming up, we're able to go, okay, wait, this is how this should work. Let's make sure we're getting that message out. But that is definitely something we can report back on.
Life is hard enough with a child that has a disability. It's hard enough for those families.
It is.
Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of questions too, and Rory, I think I am the only board member that was here the last time you were here. So good to see you again. It's certainly good to have you back. First of all, let me say a couple of things. Jen, I'm very excited to have you involved in this, because this is an area that has felt like in the years I got on the board, I think 10 minutes before you came to our meeting. It was like the last meeting in 2014 is when I was, and this has been something that we just haven't been able to get our arms around. I feel like we've been spinning our wheels. I think some good work has been done,
Yes.
but part of what, so I certainly want to acknowledge that because I do agree, I do think it has been, but the slide that showed the history really explained a lot to me. It's like, why have we not been able to get, because I know it has been important.
Right.
It continues to be important, and I know there are, some restructuring and things with the intention of gaining better traction and doing better, but that slide just explained a lot, just a lot of disconnected efforts all over the place, well-intended, so a little bit of progress, but nothing that's long-term, nothing that's in that slow lane.
Right.
As you said, if you will. And so thank you. For taking on this challenge, because it is a challenge, and it could not be, as President Simon Holland said, this is our most vulnerable group of students, and it really couldn't be more important. So we just got to get this right.
Right.
We just really, really do. So I do have a couple of questions in this. I know that it isn't something that, okay, Jen, go fix it. You and Rory, bam, there's the magic wand. I wish it were. That case. So a couple of questions. One is, how do we gain greater support at the school level? I know that's been a part of it. There was such a disconnect when I first joined the board, and I think there's still some work that needs to be done, and how we really pull that together. So we're in this thing. It isn't the district, you take care of it. It isn't school levels, you take care of it. But how do we? Yeah, how do we gain a greater level of support? That's the first question. Second question is, what is the role in the special ed advisory panel? In this, and I remember when it was established, and I was really excited about it. I think many people were. So what is their role in this? How can they help, or how do you see that? I mean, that's a panel of people that many of them have family members that are or have been, and they can really provide. So how do you see the role and them being able to help us out?
Okay. So the Special Ed Advisory Panel, what an amazing panel of people that is. If you've ever have the opportunity to come and join us for one of the meetings, it's a group of community members, physicians, UNR professors, parents, principals, teachers, staff, that have the opportunity to give us feedback and guidance as far as the community, as outside agencies or parents, what direction. So we actually, we discussed this at the last meeting. We will be defining. There have been some people that have been in this since the 2015 that were part of this original work group, and so that was their concern as well. Like, okay, we've already been here, done that. Like, what's going to be different? So they will continue to have an important role, and as we play this out, Rory and I have actually already talked about making sure they're part of the data collection, that we get the information from them, but also then when we start to look at the strategic plan, we want their feedback and input, and they're going to be part of that process as well. So they will definitely be a part of that. As far as greater support at school sites, you're right. There's been a disconnect between the district and school sites, and so that has been one area that I've been working on, and actually my team, the executive directors, and all of the area superintendents, we're going out, we're listening. Area superintendents, all of them feel more. I don't want to say confident, but they're willing. They'll come and ask me the questions. Okay, and they just solve the problems right there. So that before there was, I needed to talk, or there was a disconnect. So because schools go directly to their area superintendents, we've kind of cut out some of that questionable. How do we get those responses? So I think my opinion right now, and it's just my opinion, that schools are feeling a little more supported. I've been working with the special education staff to make sure they're going to IEP meetings. They're there to support the principals. They're more hands-on than we've had in the past. So and building their capacity and understanding what the expectation is for special education in our school district. So those are just some ways that we're trying to flatline or close together so that everyone is feeling like we are one. It is schools, it is district, we are one, working for the growth for our students.
If I may follow up,
Yes,
Madam
yes.
President. I think that's great, and I also like when you said that you talked about the involvement in the LTLs as well, because then that gives them a chance to be a part of establishing the plan, which helps to feel some ownership, because you got a chance to put it, you have some input and talk about your challenges in it and whatnot. So no pressure, but we have high hopes, Jen and Rory.
We got this,
because we just got to be better with this. We got, and again, that's not to say good work hasn't happened. It has, but just not enough of it, and not enough of it fast enough as we can see, especially by some of the lower level trends. That we're seeing. So, but thank you very much. I'm excited, and I guess the last part is continue. I love the coming back in January. You know, I'd like to have just continued information back to the board and how we're doing. This is one of the things I'm asked about often. You know, because we have to be better in it, and we really want to be. So this the more information we have and updates, I like where we're going and what we're doing, and I love the idea of having that outside lens along the way.
Yes.
Along the way. I think that will be very helpful to continue to have Rory involved. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. Question that I had was, and I didn't see it in the 2015 West Ed report, and it wasn't in the presentation here, so I don't know if it's intentional or if it just, but I didn't see anything about safety. And that's always been a pretty big concern of mine. You know, when you're working with special education students, you know, the safety for themselves, the safety of other students that are with them, the safety of staff. That's something that I would really hope that would be part of, you know, the plan, and hopefully it's brought up by the focus groups, because I can see if a student hurts himself or herself, or hurts another student, or hurts the teacher. That's the kind of thing that the ramifications of that can completely blow out, you know, the plan and the resources and the I mean, like the safety is now taking over everything else for that student. So I would just really encourage you to really look at that. You know, what can we do to make the teaching environment safer, the classroom safer? I think that would be a big morale booster for staff to know that. You know, that they've got the resources and the support that they need to feel safe as they're working with students, especially if they're students that are sometimes prone to violence or whatever. And then the other question I had was, you mentioned in January that you are going to be reaching out to principals. In January, are you also going to be reaching out to some of the other groups as well, like the teachers, the psychologists? So, okay. So you just mentioned principals, but all the other groups will be involved at that point too?
We are. So kind of a tight timeline as far as our short-term fast lane. But definitely as many department meetings as we can get to in the next couple months. That's the plan, to get their input as far as their priorities, their vision, what they would like to see handled, and what we can do quickly. Actually, I'm gonna, as far as safety, that is actually on our fast track, so to speak, as something we need to address quickly. And so that is something that we are working with the Office of School Leadership, the behavior departments, and with Dr. Lamarca's group. We are working at, finance to find cost, to address any cost concerns as far as staffing, or how do we build the capacity of our schools to address the behaviors. So that is actually on our fast, because if we can stop some of those behaviors before they get too intense, then perhaps we can address it before it actually even hits special education.
Okay, that's great. And then maybe one last suggestion that I would have, and this is for the focus groups on the teachers. I think that it would be helpful, instead of asking teachers from the district to come to headquarters here to talk about it, to try to go out to the classrooms, because something I've noticed is that when teachers leave their classroom and come to a place to talk about things, sometimes they feel overwhelmed or forget things. But if you go to them and you talk about special education stuff in their classroom, where they feel more comfortable, then they're able to better say, here's a great idea. I had an incident that happened at that desk. I've just noticed teachers are much more willing to open up and share. And so the more that you can go out to them, I think would be very helpful getting feedback from them.
That's perfect.
Okay, Vice President Raymond.
Well, thank you. I think we all probably kind of latched onto that slide with the different, and it struck me in reading the WCSD report in 2015 that the last page of that is kind of a similar description of there've been all these past things and how do we, so I don't know if this is a question for you or for us or who, but I mean, it's very possible that in 3 years that none of us will be here again. I mean, the nature of these elected positions, and so how, and maybe it's built into the plan or maybe it's something we do at a strategic planning level, but how can we hold ourselves accountable to this plan once it's established so that we don't lose sight of it in the future? I mean, again, I think I agree with President Simon Holland that we're all accountable for that, but I think it's, you know, something that none of us intentionally would ever want to have gotten to this place where, and I want to also say I know that there's been a lot of work, and I can only imagine how frustrating it is for anyone who was involved in 2015 that spent so much time and energy on this and felt that either not enough was done or that there was a lot done but nobody recognizes it. You know, I think we want this to be a full reflection of that, but we also need to have some accountability for it being completed and there being some sense of I mean, not that it's ever finished and resolved, but that we have, you know, reporting on a regular basis or something. I don't know. I don't have the answer, so.
Hi, for the record, Rory Fitzpatrick. Oh, sorry, were you going to? Okay. What I was going to say and what, sorry, Trustee Raymond, I'm going to get to know all your names other than Dr. Taylor. So, you know, I think you're speaking to this final note in the report, and I'll just read the last sentence of that, which says, WCSD strongly advises the district to document implementation efforts and share those strategically with both stakeholders internal to and external to the organization, and kind of proceeds talking about how there's been some other studies. It strikes me that the district has been really intentional about getting studies to understand the problem and less intentional about a systemic implementation plan that comes with very concrete action steps in terms of who's going to do what, by when, and what the reporting out process will be. And I think that's the reason that I think Jen has presented this 3-phase plan, which includes a pretty long-term focused effort on implementation. And I think that the district has made some admirable gains. I mean, there are many districts all over the country who are jealous of your graduation rates, so here's to that. I think that if you're going to truly be systemic, though, you've got to be focused on the whole picture. And the reason for updating the data is to deeply understand what are the problems of today and how do those resonate compared to the report 4 years ago, what needs to change, so that you can identify specific problems and in an in-depth kind of in-the-weeds sort of way, so that you can identify and have your stakeholders identify with you what the change ideas are that should be tested. Then you can test those change ideas and track to see how they're doing. I mean, the implementation and improvement sciences would say we've got to put some change ideas on the table, test them quickly so that we fail quickly and succeed quickly, and then we improve quickly, right? So I think that's the piece where you've really got to deepen your intentionality as a district, is around a strong implementation plan that comes with those concrete action steps that I mentioned, accompanied by really good progress monitoring and reporting to yourselves and the public about your success and, frankly, your failure. I don't think you should shy away from embracing your failure, because that's how we learn.
Yes, Vice President Raymond.
Well, thank you. And I also wanted to thank you for being here. You from the San Francisco area, is that correct?
Rory Fitzpatrick. So I live just right off of the Mount Rose Highway.
Okay, good.
True confession.
So you don't have to worry about
Galena
getting...
High School, and
well, I'm
so
glad we
I
don't
work
have
all
to
over
worry
the
about
country.
keeping you away from your family.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple other things I wanted to add. Really impressed with the co-teaching model in classrooms, and really grateful for the folks who have taken on that work. Visited many classrooms where it is absolutely impossible to see who is the child or children that have disabilities, who is the teacher that's the special ed teacher, and who's the general education teacher. It's absolutely phenomenal, and I think it's great for kids, and I think it's great for teachers too. So thank you for that. And just a big thank you to, and it chokes me up, the incredibly dedicated people we have working with our special ed kids.
Yes.
It's impossible to go to Piccolo or any of our other sites where we see kids with some pretty serious disabilities, and the tender compassion and the patience that if I lived 2,000 years, I could never muster that much patience and that much love and compassion that they show to our children. So I just want to say a big thank you to them. It's very difficult work, and we're grateful. And I also think that I'm sure a big part of your plan will be about staff development for our general education teachers. There's a lot of misunderstanding about kids with disabilities, and just listening to some of these young people at North Valleys yesterday, several of them said, people told me I can't do this or that, and I'm sure no one intended to give them that message, but that's the message they heard, and yet they overcame those messages and are doing wonderful things, amazing things. So we all have a lot to learn. I think it's, some of the same things we've been learning about diversity, some of our implicit biases. We all have a lot to learn about how we can embrace and empower all of our children, especially those that are different.
Yes.
Other comments so I can blow my nose.
So I just want to thank, first of all, Rory for coming back and helping us through this process. It's going to be an enormous lift, and we have a very short period of time in order to do this work, in order to start the phase 1 and phase 2. I want to say an absolute thank you to Jen Van Tresch. She has an enormous amount of responsibility. But I want the board to be assured Jen has my full support in what she is about to embark on, and she has the support of her colleagues. She also has the support of over 8,000 employees who know.
Now
I know you did. That this has to happen.
Yes.
And this is, something that needed to happen. When I was asked, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to put this on your pathway? This can go so wrong. But by gosh, it has to be there. And when you have teachers and aides, people who love what they do every single day, and they want to do the very, very best, and you have principals emailing you and say, I want to do this, and I don't know how, we got to do a better job. And I can say that as the interim, and by God, I could say it as the not the old deputy superintendent, former deputy superintendent. I am just as responsible as anyone. But the barriers must come down. The silos must stop. We have to have these honest conversations. We have to have these honest conversations at the board level, at the leadership team level, at the department level, and in the classroom. Because this is the right thing to do for our kids. It's the right thing to do for our families. So that's just a long way for me to say thank you, Jen and Rory. This is going to be a process, but it needs to happen, and the implementation is key. And Rory, you hit on it. We have to be able to monitor systemically the action steps and the recommendations, and to measure that implementation on a consistent basis, because it will, to Trustee Raymond's point, it will disappear if we don't. We have to be very transparent, we have to be very open, and we will be doing that. So thank you.
Okay. Trustee Calvert.
I also want to say thank you. And I mean, it was kind of disturbing for me to reading all of everything that I read when I was reading this. But for me, right at this point in time, I would need to hear from you a more concrete plan as to how you want to move forward, because it seems like a lot of times this has fallen and it gets picked up again. So going forward, I would like to hear or see something that 10, 15, 20 years from now, that this is something that's going to continue. It's not going to be continued to be dropped and then we pick it back up because we have issues and problems. So for me, it would be something that I really would like to see, where we have a long-term plan of moving this forward.
Other questions? Okay, public comment?
Natha Anderson.
Ms. Anderson, you're busy tonight. No, that's fine. We always appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you. Natha Anderson, Washoe Education Association. Good evening, President Simon Holland. I should have said that earlier. And good evening, trustees. Initially, I wrote down some notes about how the PowerPoint and everything, it seems to be very quick. There's a lot of information in there, and how very much WEA appreciates the urgency that is being presented. But then I kind of scraped that, and now I'm just going to go from my heart as a teacher. Thank you. As a gen ed teacher, I see my special ed peers working as hard as they possibly can and not having the answers. I see my special ed teachers as both a gen ed teacher and then also now leading this, where I bring all the special ed or even a group of 10 special ed teachers together, and instead of us being able to look at what the issues are, it becomes an emotional unleashing of issues, because the urgency is there and they cannot help our kids right now, and we don't know what to do. I also wanted to recognize Trustees Kelly's comments about the safety. Thank you, because it is something that I think we all recognize as an issue, and we don't know where to turn. I don't know what the right word is, but I am grateful that this work is getting started again. We do have 2 very strong caucus chairs for WEA. Dr. Kimberly Smirkers-Bass, who is actually part of the consultant group in the 2014 West Ed thing. She went back to teaching and is a member of ours who's leading our caucus. And then Virginia Coffey from Sparks High School as well. And both of them are very passionate about our special education and how we can keep educators in the profession, but more importantly, how we can help our kids. Because right now, so many of our educators are in survival mode and making sure that our paperwork is in and not that the child is learning. And that's where I think a large amount of the frustration is coming from. And I think that's where the emotion is coming from many of us. And I know as a gen ed teacher, that's where it's coming from for me. So thank you very much. I don't know if there's a motion or anything, but if there is, please support this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Natha.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Madam President. I do appreciate the work of staff and trustees for over a decade now on this issue. And I also heard a lot of disappointment, staff, trustees, members of the community. So we're going to need to find a solution for this. We would like a copy of all supporting material used to generate the Solutions at Work report. Redact all the names in the report. We don't care about the names. The Solutions at Work report is of great public importance and must be released as it deals with the issues that have challenged Washoe County School District for decades without resolution. These issues include special education students and parents, district employee relations, systemic nepotism, millions of dollars of taxpayer money, and taxpayer liability. Attorney-client privilege doesn't really apply to this report because the client is the Washoe County taxpayer who is assuming all the risk and paying all the bills. The people of Washoe County want to find policy solutions to these issues. Some of the answers are inside the Solutions at Work report and the supporting material. Without this knowledge, the Washoe County School District will continue to be challenged in resolving these important issues. For a school board that brags about transparency at every school board meeting, the school board and district sure have a lot of secrets. Tonight, my message is to Governor Steve Sisolak, a Democrat. Governor, my name is Todd Bailey, and I'm a Republican. Governor, after a short discussion, I believe you and I would agree we have some problems here at Washoe County School District. And while many good people have tried, there are some problems that we have not been able to solve. We may need to ask you to make an emergency declaration and direct the Nevada Department of Education to assume control of the district and appoint a temporary superintendent for us until we solve these problems. With your leadership, Governor, and strength, we might just find the solutions we need that have so far been elusive. Madam President, we strongly recommend the Washoe County School Board direct staff to create a permanent agenda item for each board meeting to address the systemic weaknesses in special education. Otherwise, students and parents will continue to be the victims of this failed board policy and the administrative civil war it created. If you are watching this board meeting and you would like to be a trustee on the Washoe County School Board and can make a true commitment to special education in a new and meaningful way, go to washoeschoolboard.com and find out what you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Tammy Burke.
Ms. Burke, welcome.
Thank you. I thought I was going to be able to get through the night without talking tonight, but apparently not. Tammy Burke, I was a CLS classroom aide for 3.5 years in this district. I absolutely loved every single student, even the students that presented daily with behavioral challenges. and I have been kicked, I have been tripped, I have been punched, but I think that is some of the negative part that both as a society and within the school system, that's the part that everyone seems to focus on. Mind you, I did not enjoy that, but in many cases, those were moments that the student was frustrated and could not vocalize what they needed to say. I raised a child who didn't speak until he was almost 2, and we won't discuss the bite mark scars that I have on my body because he could not voice what he needed to say. I will say that the district needs more aides, and I understand, we need more teachers, we need more aides, we need more money. I get that. Part of my frustration as an aide, I didn't take the job for the money. My family did not need the money, but I'll tell you the money sucked. I think that there were many cases of low expectations of the students from not just, I'll put everyone in that category. It was from admin to gen ed teachers to special ed teachers to aides to even the students themselves. There were many times that I had to convince students that I was taking to a 7th grade math class that yes, in fact, you can do this. Because as a 50-year-old, I was learning 7th grade math with them.
Right.
Yeah. There is a difference between learning it and teaching. I did figure that out. And it is a lot harder to teach it than to understand it yourself. But I think that that's the big difference is getting maybe the pay that is appropriate to get the best employees, to get the best aides, and then training them. I was one of the few aides at the school I was at that ever even went to extra training that I wasn't required to go to, but that I knew it would benefit the kids. I think we just need to put more emphasis on helping the kids realize that they can achieve this, they can be in a general ed classroom and succeed. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's all I have for this item.
Thank you, JJ. Are there any other questions or comments that anyone wants to make? Well, again, thank you so much. And Jen, thank you for stepping up to take this on. And thank you, Dr. McNeil, for your courage in taking it on. And thank you, Rory, for helping us navigate. I think you've heard clearly that we don't want this to fall off the radar. We want this to stay on our radar with some concrete actions that we can take and that we can support. And again, we are grateful for the many, many people who work to make opportunities for our students with disabilities every day. We know they work under very difficult circumstances sometimes, and we want to help and we want to be supportive, and we want to have great outcomes for our children and for those folks who are working with them. So thank you. Okay, we'll see you again in January, and happy Thanksgiving. Okay, board reports. Anyone have anything they would like to share? I know board members have been very busy. There's been a lot going on. Yes, Vice President Raymond.
I'm sorry, I don't think anyone's watching this anymore, but I just want to thank NASB for a great annual
Nevada
conference.
Association of School Boards.
Association of School Boards, sorry, for a great conference this past weekend. There were 2 amazing keynote speakers and a lot of great breakout sessions, and I think this year was just a hint of what the future holds for this group under new leadership. And so I just appreciate all that the Nevada Association of School Board members did to make it all pull together. So.
And we certainly have to thank you for serving on the executive committee, Vice President Raymond. We know it's a lot of extra help, and Trustee Kelly is our other representative to the NASB board, and we're grateful for your participation. So thank you. It was a great conference. It was a great conference, and we got to acknowledge Jonna O'Coin, who was our Administrator of the Year for the state from NASB, so that was very cool. Any other board reports? Superintendent report. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Taylor. I almost.
No, I couldn't let the board report go by without just acknowledging what a great groundbreaking it was.
Yes.
For the new
Yes.
Proctor R. Hug High School, and I actually had a chance to meet Proctor Hug the third and Proctor Hug the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
I met both of them, so it was just a great job done by staff and all those that were involved. It was quite a celebration.
That's great. That's great. Thank you.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Yes. Okay.
Hawks, yes.
Interim Superintendent McNeil.
Well, I just want to thank my entire team. This was a huge board meeting for all of us. I want to thank our communications staff. Last week was a pinnacle as far as putting that entire product together for Hug High School. We had 2 huge presentations today. People have just been working really, really hard, and I know you all know that, so I'm preaching to the choir here. I just want to send out a special thank you and happy Thanksgiving to all of our 8,000 employees. To have a safe, drive carefully, please pay attention to the weather, look for a Connect Ed, just watch the media. But thank you all to everybody, and happy Thanksgiving, Board of Trustees.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as
Neil
well.
Lombardo, Chief General Counsel, Deputy Price, and those of the millions of people that are still out in the audience.
That's right, the throngs. And for the throngs that are watching, again, the reminder to watch out for our kids when you're out there and take care of each other. Future agenda item requests. Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. And there's no rush on this, but I'd like an agenda item in the future on the use of technology or telehealth for use at schools when it comes to health of students and staff.
Okay. All right. Trustee Calvert.
I have 2. A presentation on mental health. I know that's been a big topic within our district, so I would like to have someone come and maybe give us more detail, what's going on, what are things as trustees that we can do to help move that forward as well. And I was at the CUBE conference in September, and there was a topic that really spoke to me, and I would like for someone to do a presentation on our Afro-American and Latinos in our community and in our schools about suspensions and what support they get when they are having issues or having problems with teachers. How do we support that, and do we have things in place to help these students, please.
Okay. All right. Can we add Native Americans to that?
I
'Cause
mean,
they are-
yes,
yeah,
yes.
Thank you.
Special population.
Special
Yes.
populations. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
IEP,
Mhm.
PL,
But no
CIT.
discussion. Oh, sorry, but yes.
Yes, we got it. Okay. All right.
Look at Neil,
Thank
look
you.
at Neil, look at him.
Thank you.
That's
See,
he gave
we're-
me that- he gave me the side eye.
Yeah.
He gave me the
You
side
got
eye.
you got the stink eye. That's right. Okay. Any other future agenda item requests that we won't discuss? Okay. Is there closing public comment?
Todd Bailey.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Madam President. I didn't have any closing comments, but you did ask, am I a lawyer? For the creation of a public lawyer, I am not a lawyer and have never given legal advice to anyone. I made that clear on September 24th. You weren't here for that meeting. On any legal matters concerning the district, that would go to a higher legal authority. Not me. That would be the Ethics Commission or the Attorney General. Those matters are still under review. For civil matters, it would be a civilian attorney. My comments are about school board and staff compliance with NRS. But that doesn't make me a lawyer. I'm just asking for compliance. My legal opinion has no legal standing at Washoe County School District. This is the responsibility of the legal office. And my information request is seeking the legal opinion of the legal position of the district. How else am I going to know what that is? That is proper and legal. If the lawyers are wrong, by the way, it's trustees who pay, not the lawyers. The comment about public policy creation, the diagram, wasn't about the diagram. It was about the process. The process for doing policy here at the district is no easier. The president and the superintendent can hold policy hostage before it moves on. It's no easier than before. For instance, we brought up the question of political contributions of a superintendent to trustees up to the amount of $10,000. Now, I wrote the language, I brought it to the policy committee, and nobody knew what I was talking about. It was dead silence. You could hear a pin drop when we talked about that. So it's not any easier to bring those to the board or turn them into policy. Now, when it comes to policy or any decisions like that, I go back to the SB 154 process. You may remember that, Madam President, from your time at the Commission, the SB 154 process. Now, for 1 year and a half, 18 months, it was one person who came to the meetings, who came to the work sessions, who did the research and the homework, and cited the NRS a number of times. However, that eventually turned into hundreds of people at the county commission, and one agenda item would take 5 hours. I don't think that's necessary here. More often than not, we've all found ourselves kind of in the same place, for instance, on the contract or the concerns about technology. So I think we're having a very adult discussion, and compliance with the NRS is mandatory for that discussion. And so I appreciate your concerns about me being a lawyer. It's just a hobby. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. And I think our legal counsel would agree that if you got 10 lawyers in a room, you probably get 10 different opinions, even with, even among lawyers. Okay, next meeting Tuesday, December 10th, 2019, in this room. And with that, we are adjourned. Happy Thanksgiving.